Chapter 529. Shining didn't even look at them, but her expression darkened. She said word by word, "I'll ask again, where's the mushroom?" All the disciples were stunned. What did she mean? Wasn't it the mushroom in her hand? Jianxing couldn't hold it in anymore and attacked with his sword. "Exalted Master, sorry." He raised his sword and swung it at Xinying's hand that was holding the mushroom. A sword light was about to hit her wrist. Suddenly, another sword qi rushed over from the side and broke Jianxing's move, even sending him flying and crashing into the ground with a bang. In the next moment, Yi Qing's figure appeared beside Xining. Obviously, he was the one who released that sword qi. Lonman's voice sounded from behind. "What are you doing?" "Master, are you all right?" Yi Qing scanned Xining up and down with some panic. Not finding anything wrong, he then turned to look at the person on the ground. In an instant, overwhelming sword aura gushed out and swept towards the front. The entire martial arts arena began to crack inch by inch. Jianxing, who was on the ground, was pressed into the ground. All the meridians in his body ruptured and he became a bloody man instantly. Even the other 3 disciples knelt down and vomited blood. Even their primordial spirits looked like they were about to be crushed. "Chef, calm down." Lone Moon spoke in time, trying to stop the person who was about to lose his temper. But Yi Qing didn't move until Xining also shouted, "Chef." Only then did he retract the sword qi all over his body. Everyone then felt their bodies relax. In less than 2 breaths' time, they actually felt like they had escaped from death. Their faces were full of shock. What kind of powerful sword qi was this? "Fatty, go and take a look." Lone Moon turned and instructed. Fatty hurriedly walked to the center of the martial arts arena and helped Jianxing up, who was like a bloody man on the ground. He stuffed an elixir into his mouth and used immortal qi to repair his meridians. If he had been 1 step later, he would have become a cripple. "Senior brother." Only then did Jianxing open his eyes and take a look at Fatty. He finally recovered. Yi Qing looked over again, the sword qi on his body about to burst out at any moment. "Chef, wait a moment. Ask clearly first." Lone Moon hurriedly pulled her back and looked at Jianxing over there. His expression darkened. "What exactly happened? How could you point your sword at Xining?" Jianxing pressed a hand to his chest and looked at Xining. There was some anxiety on his face. After a while, he said, "She wants to kill Mushroom." Lone Moon turned back and realized that Xining was carrying a person in her hand. It was Mushroom. But at this moment, his face was pale, as if he was about to be strangled to death. "Mushroom." Fatty panicked. He dropped Jianxing and walked over quickly. "Xining." Lone Moon paused. What was going on? Didn't she like mushrooms? The kind where they could share the fruits. Xining had no intention of replying at all. She continued to look at the man in her hand. "Where did you hide the mushroom?" "What do you mean?" "What hidden?" Lone Moon stopped mid-sentence, suddenly understanding something. His eyes widened, he conjured a seal and slapped Mushroom's forehead. A moment later, a translucent soul popped out of the mushroom's body. It was dressed exactly the same, but its face was completely different. Furthermore, it looked somewhat familiar. "Ji Lin." The 3 disciples exclaimed in unison. Even Lone Moon was stunned. When did Mushroom get possessed? They did not see any signs of possession on her body. "She's Ji Lin. Where's Mushroom?" Fatty was also confused. He was the one who treated Mushroom's injuries, but he did not notice anything different. Ji Lin panicked. She turned and wanted to float away, but Xining let go of Mushroom's body and grabbed her translucent soul again. She did not even change her hand. "Still not going to talk?" Xining tightened her grip. Jilin's translucent soul started to crack like broken glass. Ah! Jilin felt an indescribable pain. She let out a shrill scream. No, don't. It's already been eaten by the evil ghost. I didn't harm her. Don't kill me. No. Jian Xing shouted. She didn't do it on purpose. Don't hurt her. Lonman's expression darkened. He turned to look at Jian Xing. You knew from the beginning. Jian Xing paled. A moment later, he said in a low voice, that day, the evil ghost captured both of them at the same time. By the time I arrived, Mushroom's soul had already been eaten by the evil ghost. He looked up at Jilin and Shenying's hand and continued, after I rescued little Lin's soul, I realized that her body had already been eaten by the evil ghost. I could only attach her to Mushroom's body. He struggled to kneel on the ground. He looked at Lone Moon and said, Master, I was anxious to save her. I was also afraid that you would misunderstand Jilin. That's why I did not tell you the truth. Please forgive me, Master. Lone Moon frowned. Possession was a heinous crime, but given the circumstances, he really did not have much of a choice. Otherwise, he might not have been able to save either of them. Even he could not say that what he did was wrong. But, is that so? Shenying suddenly spoke. Her gaze turned cold. Mushroom is really dead. Everyone was stunned. What did she mean? Shenying suddenly raised her other hand and reached toward Jilin's head. What are you trying to do? Stop. Jilin was shocked. No matter how hard she tried, she could not escape from Shenying's palm. In the next moment, the same intense pain attacked her again. This time, it was more intense than before. Only last time, it was the pain of her soul being torn apart. Shenying was indeed tearing her soul apart. She grabbed one side of her soul and pulled it apart. Ah! Help, save me. Brother. Little Lin. Jian Xing tried to crawl over, but he fell to the ground weakly. He could only glare at Shenying and watch as she forcefully split Jilin's soul into two. The originally translucent soul became even more translucent. But it was now divided into two figures. One still looked like Jilin, while the other, Mushroom. Fatty cried out in shock. It was not just the few people present. Even Jian Xing, who was on the ground, had a look of disbelief on his face. How could this be? Why was Mushroom's soul in Jilin's body? Fatty stepped forward and took the translucent soul from Shenying's hands. He called out a few times, but there was no response at all. How could this be? She lost her primary soul. This is only one of her souls. Lone Moon took a look and saw the problem. A soul that had lost its primary soul had no sentience. That was why there was no response. Chapter 530. Lone Moon turned to look at Jilin, who was still screaming in Shenying's hands. You swallowed Mushroom's soul on purpose. That soul of Mushroom might have contained her memories, which was why she could hide it for so long, even fooling Fatty. This was also why they could not tell that Mushroom had already been possessed. Mushroom wasn't devoured by the evil spirit on its own. You did it, didn't you? No. I don't know. Jilin kept struggling. Perhaps it was because of the pain of her soul being split, or the guilt of being discovered, she started to speak without thinking. I just wanted to come back. Everyone's faces darkened. They looked at Jilin in disbelief. If she had done this on purpose, then some things were not just coincidences. Including the fact that her soul had just left her body and she had just lost her soul. They could not help but think back to what they had experienced. They could not help but guess that she had always been at the foot of the mountain. Tsuhang City was not far from here. Perhaps she had. At that moment, all the disciples felt a chill down their spines. Even Jian Xing's face was pale. He looked shocked. Lone Moon's eyes darkened. He raised his hand and dissipated the life force around Jilin's soul. Her originally transparent soul began to reveal traces of black. That was ghost qi. She was no longer a living soul. She was a real ghost. He set up a reincarnation array. He looked at Shining and said, "Send her into samsara." Shining frowned. She tightened her grip. With a few cracking sounds, a few more cracks appeared on the soul. Then, she threw it into the reincarnation array. Jilin swallowed Mushroom's soul. Naturally, she had to give up one of her own. Now that Shining had taken it out, her soul was no longer complete. Coupled with those cracks, even if she reincarnated, she would not be a complete person. There would always be something missing. Lone Moon sighed. He turned to look at Mushroom beside Fatty. She was even worse off. She only had one soul left. He did not know how long she would have to stay in the river of forgetfulness for a chance to reincarnate. After all, even her primary soul had been swallowed by that evil ghost. Wait. Evil ghost? Lone Moon paused. Suddenly, he recalled something. Shining, where's the remnant soul from the evil ghost? Shining stared blankly at him. A moment later, she said, "Oh, it's here." As he spoke, he took out the talisman from the bag and tore it to release the remnant soul. A red light floated out from the talisman and formed a red ball. It carried an eerie ghost qi. After a few months, the remnant soul in Xinying's body had actually grown a little bigger. Strangely, it did not take the opportunity to escape. Instead, it floated obediently in front of Shining. Lone Moon took a closer look and realized that the remnant soul was filled with the demonic aura of an evil ghost. There was no aura of a mushroom at all. Could he have guessed wrongly? Just as he was thinking, Shining handed the red light to Yi Qing. "Chef, fire." "Yes, master." Yi Qing turned his palm. Without any hesitation, a true phoenix fire appeared and surrounded the remnant soul. In the blink of an eye, the baleful qi and ghostly qi all disappeared. Only then did Yi Qing retract his hand. The originally fiery remnant soul slowly turned into an ordinary white transparent state, and slowly began to transform into a human form. Mushroom. Fatty was delighted. He was the first to recognize it. He did not expect that the remnant soul of the evil ghost was wrapped around Mushroom's main soul. Lone Moon heaved a sigh of relief. No wonder after that evil ghost died, this remnant soul flew towards Shining. It was not trying to escape, but Mushroom was asking Shining for help. He directly combined Mushroom's main soul and the remnant soul in Fatty's hand into one, and put them back into her body. Indeed, in a short while, Mushroom opened her eyes and looked at Fatty with some confusion. Huizhe. Suddenly, she seemed to recall something. Her face was full of fear. Jilin, she wanted to eat me, Huizhe, it's all right, it's all right. Fatty comforted her and transferred a bit of immortal qi over. Only then did she calm down. She seemed to be exhausted. Slowly, she closed her eyes and fell into a deep sleep. Although her main soul had returned, she had lost 2 souls and 6 spirits after all. It was already not easy for her to be awake for a short while. But as long as the main soul was there, the other spirits could be nurtured back. Lone Moon took a look at Mushroom, then turned to look at Jian Xing. His expression darkened instantly. Only then did he walk over. Moss, Jian Xing's expression was complicated. He seemed to have not recovered from what had just happened. He was at a loss and flustered. Jian Xing, do you know your mistake? Lone Moon looked at the person in front of him, his eyes full of disappointment. But Jian Xing was the disciple that he had taught the most diligently in all these years. Although he was not the most outstanding, he had the highest expectations of Jian Xing. Unfortunately, the higher the expectations, the greater the disappointment. Master. The panic in Jian Xing's eyes deepened. Please forgive me, Master. I did not know that little Lin would do such a thing. Seeing that, the other 3 disciples also knelt down and began to plead for mercy. Exalted Master, although Uncle Master Jian Xing is Ji Lin's brother and sister, it is understandable that he did not know the inside story. Yes, Exalted Master. He who does not know is not guilty. Ji Lin was not that kind of person in the first place. No one would have thought that she would purposely take over someone else's body. Exalted Master, although he was negligent, please forgive him this time on account of the fact that he was wholeheartedly dealing with the evil ghost. Even Fatty frowned and added, Master, since Ji Lin has been executed, justice has been served to Mushroom. After all, Jian Xing was the only sword cultivator that Master had put in so much effort to teach. And he was about to leave the mountain to establish his own sect. He was angry about what happened to Mushroom, but he could not bear to see Master's years of hard work go to waste. Lone Moon's expression darkened even more. The hand by his side tightened its grip on his fan. Taking a deep breath, he turned to look at Shining and Chef. What do you think? Chef did not speak. The anger on his face had not dissipated. It was obvious that Mushroom and whatnot should be put aside. Just based on what he did to Shining just now, this person was already a dead man in his eyes. Shining, on the other hand, raised her head and looked straight at Lone Moon. After a while, she said, You can decide. You don't have to listen to other people's opinions, including mine. Lone Moon was stunned for a moment. Then, his expression softened a little. He continued to turn to look at the person on the ground and asked word by word, Jian Xing, apart from helping Ji Lin to take over your body, do you really know nothing about her plot? Jian Xing paused. After a while, he still nodded and said, I really don't know. Jian Xing. Lone Moon took a deep breath and then let out a long sigh, as if he had finally let go of something. You disappoint me too much. Jian Xing panicked. Suddenly, he had the illusion that he was about to lose something. Frantically, he reached out to the corner of Lone Moon's robe. Master. Chapter 531. But Lone Moon took a step back and dodged his hand. Now that things have come to this, you still don't know how to repent. You said you didn't know Ji Lin's plot at all, but why did you have to kill that evil ghost back then, even to the last remnant of her soul? That day when Shining caught that remnant soul, he had suggested to completely destroy that remnant soul. His face paled, and he couldn't speak. As a cultivator, you should know that even if it's an evil ghost, purifying it and sending it into samsara is the best solution, but you didn't do that. Lone Moon said in a low voice, directly exposing his thoughts. With your cultivation, a half-step ghost king can't hurt you like that, unless that evil ghost was forced into a corner by you and had no choice but to make you pay at the cost of her soul dissipating. He couldn't speak, but his body started to tremble. You said you didn't know about Ji Lin's plot beforehand, I believe you. But after you helped Mushroom resurrect her soul, you should have long discovered the truth, but you still chose to kill that evil ghost. Lone Moon looked straight at him. Did you really do this just to get rid of the evil, and not to help Ji Lin hide the truth? Jian Xing's body swayed, and he directly sat on the ground, his face ashen. Wrong is wrong. If you had taken the initiative to confess from the start, I might have let you off. Lone Moon closed his eyes and said with some fatigue, Jian Xing, you really disappoint me. Master. He suddenly raised his head and looked at him with a complicated expression. Then teach me, what should I do? She's my sister, my only family. If I don't help her, am I supposed to watch her become a wandering ghost? Then you can bear to let Mushroom's soul dissipate. Jian Xing's expression became more and more stubborn, as if he was staking it all on one throw. He smiled and said, "Everyone has their own selfish motives. I chose to save my own sister, is that wrong? There's no such thing as right or wrong in this world, it's just different standpoints. Besides, wasn't Master the reason why little Lin became like this?" "What did you say?" Lone Moon frowned. "Isn't that so?" Jian Xing said with a mocking smile. "You took her into the immortal sect and let her see a wider world, but then you abandoned her. How could she not be resentful? Everything she did was for the sake of returning. What wrong did she do?" Lone Moon's frown deepened. Who in this world is completely selfless? However, the more he spoke, the more energetic he became, as if he wanted to pour out all the words he had suppressed for so many years. "Even if you're master, you're still the same. Do you think that helping the wicked is purely selfish?" Lone Moon laughed coldly, and the last bit of pity in his heart disappeared. "Isn't that so?" Lone Moon thought that Lone Moon was going to deny it. He pointed at Shining and said, "Isn't she your selfish motive? She's clearly useless, she can't even abstain from eating, but you protect her all the time and favor her. You can't tolerate others talking bad about her, just because Jilin offended you, you expelled them from the sect. She can eat spirit fruits that are 100 years old, she can take spirit herbs that are 10,000 years old, and she can waste the inner cores of high-level demonic beasts as she pleases." Yet, he wasn't willing to give a single cent to his sect's heavily injured disciple. Why? Isn't it because of Master's selfishness? I Ching couldn't take it anymore. He even summoned his sword, but Shining stopped him. Fatty's face was black, and Father Nio's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Shining, on the other hand, looked like she didn't care. She was still chewing on her fruit leisurely, as if the person being accused was not her. "In order not to wake her up from her sleep, you abandoned the evil ghost and put the whole city in danger." The more he spoke, the more agitated he became. The way he looked at Shining was like knives were about to fly out. It was he who gave Jilin the chance to take over her body. "If I'm wrong, you guys are the same. Are you done?" Lone Moon's expression was frighteningly calm. There was even a faint smile on his face. "Is this what you really think? You always thought that Jilin was expelled from the sect because I was selfish and sided with Shining." "Yes." He nodded directly. "If not for Master favoring her, based on her capabilities, how much do you know about her capabilities? Have you experienced it?" Lone Moon interrupted him directly. Jian Xing was stunned, as if he didn't understand what he meant. But Lone Moon's smile deepened and became colder. "Then let me tell you. Me, Chef, Fatty and even everyone here combined would not be enough to deal with Shining with one hand." He scanned everyone present and said word by word, not only that, if she wanted the survival of the entire human continent, to her, it would only be a matter of a single thought. "Do you still think that's just my selfish motives?" There was a sudden silence. Even Jian Xing's expression was one of disbelief. "I didn't wake her up from her sleep because none of you could bear the consequences of waking her up. Isn't it because her cultivation level is low that she never bickers with you? That's because your levels are too low. You can't reach her. Do you really think that her title as sect master is undeserved?" "No, impossible." Jian Xing looked at Shining, still in disbelief. "What do spirit fruits, spirit plants and inner cores have to do with you? Don't find excuses for your greed. You just think that because Mushroom is a little demon, it's more important for Jilin to be alive. You think that because Shining is immortal, her resources should be distributed to others. Humph. At the end of the day, your so-called reason is just to bully the kind and fear the evil." Jian Xing's face paled again. He looked lost, as if something had been broken. "Jian Xing." Lone Moon looked at him seriously and said, "It's true that everyone has selfish motives. You chose Shilin and gave up on Mushroom. That's not entirely wrong. There is indeed no right or wrong in this world, but there is definitely evil and good in this world." He raised his hand and conjured a seal. "My invincible sect does not need disciples with evil intentions." "No, Master." Great fear flashed across Jian Xing's face. He turned and crawled towards Lone Moon. But Lone Moon did not stop. He conjured a seal and destroyed Jian Xing's dantian. In the next moment, all the spirit qi in his body faded. Even the nascent soul in his sea of consciousness dissipated. His youthful appearance also changed visibly. He became about 40 years old. Jian Xing looked at his own hands, his eyes full of fear. "Master." He looked up and wanted to beg for something. But Lone Moon pointed at his glabella. "The experience of going up the mountain to learn Tao is the main cause of Jilin's change. Then erase this memory as well." Jian Xing's eyes widened. Before he could resist, he felt a wave of dizziness and fainted. Chapter 532. Send him down the mountain. Lone Moon turned to look at the remaining 3 disciples. "Yes, exalted Master." The 3 of them then went forward to lift the person on the ground, turned around and retreated. Fatty carried Mushroom as well. "Master, I'll bring Mushroom down first." "Yes." Lone Moon responded, but his eyes were still looking at the messy martial arts arena. His expression was dark, and no one knew what he was thinking. However, the surrounding air became heavy. Shining exchanged a look with Chef, then took 2 steps forward and stood beside him. Shining even took out a plate of pastries and handed it over. "Father Nyo, want some?" "I'm not eating." "Oh." Shining stuffed it into her mouth. For a moment, the entire arena fell silent again. Only the sound of Shining chewing on the pastries could be heard. After a long time, seeing that the pastries were almost finished, Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Finally, he could not help but say, "Can't the 2 of you comfort me?" "Father Nyo, what do you want to hear?" Shining asked. "How would I know? Can't you see that I'm in low spirits?" "All right." Shining sighed. "Father Nyo, you have so many students. There are bound to be 1 or 2 who can't graduate. Relax. Master is right." Chef replied casually, "You've taught so many people, there's bound to be a group of people who can't become sword cultivators. You call this comforting?" This was more like throwing stones into a well. If Father Nyo really can't bear to let her go, it's not a big deal to call her back. There were indeed too few people who were born with a sword embodiment. Besides, although Jian Xing made a mistake when it came to his sister, he didn't have any other shortcomings. It wasn't like he couldn't change it. "No." He frowned and said, "Even if there is a shortage of sword cultivators in this world, I cannot tolerate someone with such evil intentions like him going there to teach. But everyone has their flaws." "I know." Lone Moon turned to Shining and said, "What I can't forgive is not that he always protects his sister, but that he has evil intentions towards innocent people. What did Mushroom do wrong to have to pay the price for Jilin's selfishness?" Jian Xing clearly knew that Mushroom was innocent, but he still helped Jilin take over her body, and helped her plan her retreat. If he had said it at that time, it was not as if there was no other way. But he didn't. If he treats the people he knows like this, then what will he do when he sets up his own sect and no one restrains him? Lone Moon sighed. "Of course I know that no one is perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. I've taught him for so many years, and I was just about to finish my apprenticeship, but because of this matter, I failed. This matter concerned the entire human race, so it was indeed not worth it. However, I cannot ignore the truth just because of his importance to the human race. If I let him go, then who will let Mushroom go? Who could she talk to about her reasoning? If everyone gave up the truth for the sake of greater benefits, then the world would be in chaos. This world is too scary. I just feel that there is no right or wrong in the world, and it is difficult to distinguish between good and evil, but at least there is fairness, right? He said this so seriously that even I Ching looked at him with some surprise, as if it was the first time he met him. Was this still the profiteer from before? Shining suddenly laughed out loud. She patted his shoulder with a rare look of sincerity. Father Nyo, good job. Why did she suddenly praise him so seriously? You did it. What? Lone Moon was stunned. In the next moment, he heard a rumble of thunder from above, and the sky suddenly darkened. Looking up, he saw that the sky was filled with layers of thunder clouds covering the entire sky. It was not just nearby. He subconsciously released his divine perception to scan, and found that the entire human world, no. It should be said that the entire plane was like this. Thick thunder clouds appeared in every part of the sky of the entire plane. It was clearly a clear sky just now, but now it was all pitch black with thunder clouds. Only the clouds occasionally revealed the light of various colors of lightning. The thunder clouds were extremely thick. They looked like tribulation clouds, but they were different. Especially above the clouds, there seemed to be something huge forming, like a huge invisible net covering the entire plane. That thing was familiar yet strange, invisible and yet everywhere. Lone Moon even felt that it was close to him. This was nomological power. Before Lone Moon could react, the transmission amulet beside him suddenly lit up. Hong Meng's excited voice sounded from it. Lord, Lord. Did you see it? It's the heavenly Tao, the heavenly Tao is born. Look at the sky, it's the heavenly Tao, finally born. That's great. Sob sob sob, this world finally has a heavenly Tao, ha ha ha, wah. Hong Meng cried and laughed at the same time. He was so excited that if he was not careful, he would drill through the transmission amulet. His voice was so noisy that it gave Lone Moon a headache. Lone Moon was also a little confused. He looked up at the sky and once again sensed the layers of tribulation clouds above. That newly born nomological power. Almost instantly, the nomological power above responded to him, as if it was very welcoming of his visit, with a hint of excitement. It was really the heavenly Tao. Why was it suddenly born? They didn't do anything. Something like the heavenly Tao, shouldn't it be like a constitution, something that needed to be discussed one by one? After a period of practice, could it finally be confirmed? Shining, the manager, hadn't done anything yet. Could it be that he had overlooked something? Let him recall what happened just now. It seemed that he only said one sentence, fairness. He only felt his heart skip a beat. His hand tightened and he directly crushed the transmission amulet in his hand. Hong Meng's ghostly cries finally stopped. Only then did he turn to look at the master and disciple beside him. His expression darkened, like a storm was approaching. The two of you, you'd better tell me honestly. What exactly is going on? The two of them stiffened at the same time and turned their eyes, one to the left and the other to the right. Ah. What is Father Nyo saying? I don't understand at all. Yes, Father Nyo, how can we tell you? Pretend. Continue pretending. Lone Moon pointed to the sky. This heavenly Tao was born because of me, right? I'm just AF * king assistant, not even from this plane. Where did I get such great authority? Congratulations, Father Nyo. Shining turned and took out a piece of paper and stuffed it into his hand, as if she had prepared it for a long time. You've been promoted. From now on, you're the manager of this plane. Clap. With that said, the master and disciple clapped their hands together and let out a series of awkward applause. He subconsciously looked down, only to see that there was an additional A4 paper in his hand. On it was a row of eye-catching big words, Plane Transfer Certificate. Lone Moon. Motherf ****. Chapter 533. 3 hours later. So, the Heavenly Tao was really born because of me. Lone Moon tried his best to suppress the anger in his heart and said word by word through gritted teeth. You're the manager. Your thoughts are the rules of heaven and earth. I Ching nodded. You already knew. Lone Moon looked at Chef. His eyes were like ice knives stabbing at him. Air. Chef faltered. Should he say that he knew or didn't know? Which means. Lone Moon's hand tightened. His fan cracked and almost broke. You've been so obedient recently because you're working together to trick me into getting on board. Father no, don't worry about such details. Getting promoted is a good thing. Details my ass. How was this a detail? This kind of job with no salary, no insurance, no rest, 24 hours a day, how is it a good thing? Air. That made so much sense that she had nothing to say. One plane is enough to worry me. Do you think it's fun to throw another one over? He turned to glare at Shining. And Shining. You're just freaking lazy. You're all prodigals who depend on me. How dare you add more work for me? As expected, he still flipped out. Father No was so scary. The two of them hugged each other and trembled. You two still dare to show off your affection. Shining, I-Ching, they immediately separated and hugged themselves. They lowered their heads and tried to reduce their presence. Anyway, I'm not taking this plane. You can throw it to whoever you want. Lone Moon paced back and forth angrily. If you can't do it, return it to Hong Mang. I'm already busy enough with the previous plane. Who wants to take this rubbish? Then what if we don't care about the previous one? Shining asked weakly. Lone Moon stopped in his tracks. What do you mean? I mean. Shining was about to explain when a rumble of thunder came from the sky. The three of them stilled. The lightning clouds that had just dissipated began to gather again. But this time, they only gathered on the mountain top and not the entire plain. And looking at the thick pressure of heaven and earth in the clouds, this was tribulation lightning. Master. Fatty hurried over and looked at the three of them. It's the sex disciples. They're going through the tribulation. It's the golden core lightning tribulation. So fast. Lone Moon paused for a moment. He did not expect that the first lightning tribulation would be here when the heavenly Tao had just been formed. Let's go take a look. The situation was urgent, so he had to go and take a look. When he reached the door, he paused and turned back to glare at the two. You two wait for me. This isn't over yet. With that, he walked out. Shining, I-Ching, after a long while. Master, how much food allowance do you think will be deducted this time? 3 months. Why did he feel that 3 years was a possibility? He wondered if he had saved enough food for the past few years. Lone Moon had just arrived at the front hall when he saw the 3 disciples standing on the platform in the middle with blank expressions on their faces. They looked at the spirit chi around them that had suddenly started to increase explosively, as if they had not reacted at all. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and meditate, the heavenly lightning is coming, Lone Moon reminded them loudly. The 3 of them were stunned. Only then did they sit down cross-legged. However, they still looked confused, completely unaware of the danger they were in. Lone Moon could not help but speak again. This is your tribulation, and also a test for you by the heavenly Tao. After Golden Core, every major realm, the heavens will send down a lightning punishment. You have to use all your strength to deal with it, only then can you survive this tribulation. You cannot avoid it, you cannot bear it, and even your life will be in danger. If you succeed, your cultivation will increase, if you fail, you will die. Only then can you obtain the approval of the heavenly Tao, understand? A trace of panic flashed across the three's eyes, but they immediately calmed down and replied in unison, yes. Exalted Master. With that said, they began to prepare 120% of their energy. They mobilized their spirit chi and got into a defensive posture. The lightning tribulation in the sky was almost ready, and the surrounding spirit chi was getting thicker. Suddenly, 3 white lightning bolts, carrying with them the power of heaven and earth, broke through the clouds at the same time, heading straight for the 3 people below. Seeing that it was about to strike, Lone Moon also raised his head to look at the sky, intending to observe the first lightning tribulation of this plane. Suddenly, the lightning in the sky paused, as if it had come to an emergency stop midway, and stopped with a click in the air. The white electric head seemed to have come to life. Suddenly, it bent in Lone Moon's direction, then turned back to look at the 3 people on the ground. Then it looked at Lone Moon, then looked at the 3 people on the ground. It bent back and forth a few times, as if hesitating whether to strike or not. Even the nomological power around it seemed to be at a loss, as if asking for his opinion. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. The heavenly Tao really was born because of him. After a while, he gritted his teeth and said word by word, "Do your thing. Why are you looking at me?" Only then did the heavenly lightning strike the 3 people's heads. The first was the mental demon tribulation. The 3 of them instantly fell into the mental demon tribulation, and their expressions changed. But after all, it was only the golden core lightning tribulation, and they quickly regained their senses. Then, the second and third lightning fell one after another. Every lightning bolt struck the people below with unerring accuracy. Not only did it not deviate, but even the extent of each lightning bolt in the sky was exactly the same. Even the pressure in each lightning bolt, and the amount of electricity, were not the slightest bit different. Lone Moon faintly felt that he was watching a standard demonstration of the lightning tribulation, the kind that a leader would perform while inspecting. Lone Moon's expression became darker and darker. If not for the fact that the heavenly lightning had not finished striking, he really wanted to go back and beat the asses of these 2 people. The lightning tribulation struck very quickly. A total of 81 lightning bolts struck, not one more or one less. The lightning tribulation in the sky dissipated completely, leaving only the surrounding rich spirit chi and a trace of the nomological power of heaven and earth revolving around Lone Moon, as if waiting for the leader to speak, not daring to disperse. Lone Moon took a deep breath and suppressed the irritation in his heart. Only then did he reply, "All right." That trace of nomological power dissipated. Faintly, there was the illusion that the other party heaved a huge sigh of relief. Fortunately, the leader was satisfied. Although the 3 people who were going through the lightning tribulation were all injured to varying degrees, the spirit chi in their bodies had become more condensed. This was the benefit of the heavenly lightning. As long as they passed the test of the lightning tribulation, the heavenly Tao was still kind to cultivators. Fatty checked their injuries one by one and found that none of them were particularly serious. Instead, their cultivation levels were showing signs of improvement. This could be considered as the heavenly Tao's compensation to them. After all, they had already formed their cores for a long time. Before the heavenly Tao was formed, the lightning tribulation was considered late. They could have just let it go, but now that they were already under the nomological power, the lightning tribulation still descended. Chapter 534. Fatty distributed some recovery elixirs to his disciples, then gave them some pointers on their cultivation, and told them about the heavenly tribulation in detail. Perhaps because they had personally experienced the pressure of heaven and earth, there was a hint of respect in their eyes. Due to their years of cultivation, they had unconsciously developed a sense of superiority, which unexpectedly dissipated a lot. If these three maintained their original intentions, it was not impossible for them to become great grandmasters in the future. Lone Moon nodded in satisfaction, then let Fatty bring them away. Thinking that there were still two little bastards waiting to be dealt with in the rear hall, he walked back. Only to find that Hong Meng, who should have been thousands of miles away, had appeared out of nowhere and was sitting inside. "Why are you here?" Lone Moon glared at him. "You left Rabbit there alone." "Don't worry, Lord Lone Moon, Brother Rabbit is knowledgeable and eloquent, and most of those divine beings are already meditating. It will be fine alone." Hong Meng laughed. "What's more, I have nothing to do in Purple Night Palace. I'm really bored. The only thing I can help is at most to pass Brother Rabbit some carrots." "We've already done your work, of course you're fine." Lone Moon looked at him disdainfully. "I really don't know how you managed to become an ancient god. No wonder the plane was destroyed by you guys previously." Hong Meng felt like he was about to spit out blood. How could he not stab him? He felt so wronged he wanted to cry, but he had to maintain a smile. He. "You're right, Lord, isn't this all thanks to your help? I'm here specially to thank you for rebuilding the heavenly Tao." Lone Moon narrowed his eyes and scanned him from head to toe. "Do all your planes come empty-handed to express their gratitude?" Hong Meng stiffened, faintly feeling another stab in his chest. He had even moved his house and mountain over. What else did he want? What happened to being friends? This stab after stab was so heart-wrenching. "You came all the way here just for this?" Lone Moon glanced at him suspiciously. Hong Meng rubbed his hands, his eyes drifting, and after a while, he said tentatively, "It's like this, now that the heavenly Tao has been established. The plane crisis can be considered completely resolved, but the different races living together is after all not conducive to the plane's development. So, it's better to treat them separately. It's a pity that my magic power is weak. Moreover, I heard that the heavenly Tao was born because of Lord Lone Moon, so could you please help?" Scram! Before he could finish speaking, Lone Moon slammed the word into his face. Hong Meng was stunned. Why wasn't he playing by the rules? If you want to divide the world, do it yourself. I don't want to care about the matters of your plane. You don't even pay me a salary. Why should I indulge you? Father no. I Ching could not help but take a step forward as well. He pulled Lone Moon over and whispered, "You're the manager of this plane now. If you don't do anything about it, this plane will collapse." While Hong Meng did not know about this, it was good to make him work for him. Ha ha. Lone Moon smacked him in the face. "You two master and disciple tricked me into accepting it, and now you're blaming me." I Ching. "Master, I've tried my best." Shining could only carry the plate of pastries and move over, squeezing into their private chat circle. "Father no, this matter is already settled. What's more, this company is already yours. You're already the boss. Naturally, there won't be any salary." Lone Moon's eyes narrowed. His eyes were filled with the light of wisdom that saw through all the traps. "You mean, I don't have to work for you anymore?" "Oh, that's not it." He still had to continue raising his daughter. "Then what the hell are you talking about?" At the end of the day, he was still the one who worked himself to death. It was bad enough that he had to raise two little rascals in the past. Now, even Hong Meng was involved. What the hell was this? He even brought along the burden of an entire plane. Father Nyo, who had changed his business model, was too difficult to fool. They suddenly understood the feelings of those who had been tricked by him before. Sigh. Shining sighed. Suddenly, she turned and stuffed the plate of pastries in her hands to Chef. She took a deep breath and reached out to grab his sleeve. Something on her body instantly dispersed. She blinked her eyes and bit her lower lip, revealing a crying expression. Her voice instantly rose and said with a hint of cuteness, "Father no. Are you really not going to take it?" "Of course not." Lone Moon subconsciously turned back. The words that were about to come out of his mouth were instantly stuck in his throat. He vaguely felt as if his heart had been hit by a huge object called cuteness. He could not control his hands. He wanted to throw away his integrity. After trembling for a long time, he barely managed to control himself. "Shit! Don't think of using the same method that you used on Shinjing to deal with me." He was someone who had been cuter than littling after all. He could bear it. His head held up. He could not nod. "All right." Shining once again released all the laziness in her body. She kept Shin Meng back. "If you really don't want to take it, then forget it." "Master." I Ching was also shocked by Shin Ying's sudden action just now. He immediately sobered up and spoke up a little anxiously. "Forget it, chef. Don't force Father no." Shining gave a long sigh. She tilted her head and muttered in a seemingly unintentional manner, "But I've already transferred this plane. I have to find someone to take it. It's not easy to get the plane's recognition. Other than Father no, I can't find anyone else. Why don't I just throw it to my big sister to manage? This place is also close to my side. She can still drop by from time to time." Lone Moon and I Ching's faces turned pale. They only felt a chill coming from the bottom of their hearts. They hurriedly interrupted her. "All right, I'll take it." He would take it, all right. Don't invite that big demon king over. Really? Really? Did he have any other choice? You're not forcing it. Not forcing it. It would be strange. But forcing it was still better than being beaten to death by the big demon king. He gritted his teeth. "All right, Father no. Thank you for your hard work, Father no." Father Nyo's promotion was thus happily decided. Shining patted his shoulder. She took the pastries from Chef's hands. "Want some?" "Get lost." "All right." Only then did the three of them reach a consensus. They ended the meeting and turned to return to the table. Yet they found Hong Meng looking at Shining with a dazed expression. Although he couldn't hear anything, he obviously saw something. He looked like he was swept by the Mo light wave tail. What was that just now? He suddenly felt his heart beating so fast. What was with this urge to rub something? His eyes subconsciously turned to look at Shining. "What are you looking at?" The two protective friends and relatives shouted back fiercely at the same time. "What has it got to do with you?" "No. I don't know what's going on either." "Holy shit, you dare to have a nosebleed." "Master, can I kill him?" Shining. Chapter 535. When the plane first opened, the three realms were all connected. Only when the heavenly Tao was established and the rules were formed, did the three realms begin to be divided. And what Lone Moon needed to do now was to divide the realms. Once the three realms were truly separated, the problem of the human race that Hong Meng was worried about would no longer exist. In addition to what Lone Moon had done previously, the teachings had already been passed down. Although the human race still could not defeat the divine race, they were no longer completely defenseless. Hong Meng explained to them the problem of how to divide the realms. If it was just a piece of land, it was naturally simple. It was like a flat piece of paper, to be divided into 3 layers, one could just tear it apart. But dividing the realms was different. Although the 3 realms were separated, they were connected to each other. Otherwise, it would not be considered a complete plane. Like the previous plane, although the boundaries between the realms could not be crossed, there was still a realm gate connecting them. Then what do we do? Lone Moon frowned. They had to separate and connect them. Were they going to fold the plane? But wouldn't that crush the lower layers? This is very easy to solve. Hong Meng hurriedly said with some flattery. You just have to set up the original source purple gas, which is this plane's river of forgetfulness. But because there is no Mengpe here, I still have to trouble you to personally set up the river of forgetfulness. How to set it up? That ball of original source purple gas back then had now grown into a river and covered the entire plane. You just have to go to the center of the purple gas. Hong Meng hurriedly said. As long as you can help me and let it return to its original state, when the division of the three realms is complete, then it will be restored. Lone Moon pressed his forehead and sighed. There was no other way, the mess had already been taken care of. So he gave a few instructions to Fatty and pulled the two master and disciple along. Don't think of slacking off either. Then he set off with Hong Meng. The place that Hong Meng mentioned was actually from his Purple Night Palace. Alright, there was only Purple Night Plain left now. It was not very far. After all, it was the center of the entire plane. Hong Meng had gone through so much to revive his plane. Naturally, he was especially nervous about the original source purple gas and did not dare to live too far away. He had even used up half of his divine power to completely isolate the area to prevent ignorant gods from accidentally breaking in and causing damage. This was also part of the reason why he couldn't defeat the 12 gods. Along the way, they encountered countless traps and arrays. Some of them even Hong Meng himself forgot about them and were almost trapped outside. It took him a lot of effort to break the array and enter. Lone Moon strongly condemned his unreliable behavior, and then scolded him for 2 hours. With great difficulty, they finally reached the center of the origin purple gas. It was an unremarkable wasteland. It was so desolate that there was not even half a plant, let alone other creatures. However, in the eyes of these people, it was completely different. It was an endless expanse of purple, like a purple ocean, floating in the air, reflecting the entire world in purple. Connecting the purple sea were rivers of varying width and width. They extended in all directions and reached every corner of the plain. Lone Moon was shocked by the scene in front of him for a moment. He did not expect that the original source, which was the size of a well at that time, had become so big now. It seemed that Hong Meng had really been trying his best to protect it all these years. Lord, this is the center of the original source. Hong Meng said with a little pride. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. King want us to keep such a big ocean? Are you kidding me? How can I keep it? Of course we can't keep it directly. Hong Meng explained. The original source now is different from before. To completely control it, we may have to go closer to the center. Then what are you waiting for? Let's go. Lone Moon urged. All right. Hong Meng then continued to fly in. Their figures instantly disappeared into the large expanse of purple chi. The deeper they flew, the thicker the aura of the original source became. Apart from a sea of purple, they could not see anything at all. Lone Moon followed behind Hong Meng. At the same time, he had to release his divine perception to follow the center where the purple chi was the thickest. He did not know whether it was a good illusion or not. He kept feeling that the more he flew, the deeper the purple became. It gave him the illusion that it was getting darker. It was as if a monster that could support the heavens was pouncing towards them. Roar, holy shit. So it was not an illusion. It really was a monster. Lone Moon hurriedly pulled Hong Meng to the side and pulled Hong Meng back. In the next moment, a huge claw the size of a mountain directly slammed down from the side with a loud bang, causing a gust of wind to blow away the hazy purple gas in front of them. The wind was so strong that even Lone Moon could not stand steadily. What the hell is this? Lone Moon then saw clearly that it was a huge monster that was as tall as the sky. He could not even see its head. The lower half of its body was immersed in the original source purple chi. There were black and white circles around it like a zebra crossing. And those lines were constantly moving. There was no fixed pattern. Its whole body was surrounded by these two colors. He could not see its specific shape at all. Its whole body was also emitting an aura that he had never seen before. It was as if it did not exist in any plane. This is a beast of chaos. Hong Meng exclaimed, his face full of disbelief. What beast of chaos? Lone Moon asked. That is a monster that lives in the chaos. Hong Meng explained even more frantically. It must have come to this plane with the living beings of the plane. The chaos chi of those living beings nourished it. That is why it has been hiding in the original source of the plane. Why didn't you say such an important thing earlier? Things that came from the chaos were scarier than those that came from other planes. I don't know either. Hong Meng also looked anxious. If they let it stay here any longer, when it finished absorbing the chaos chi, it would attack the original source purple chi. Shening, this thing. Lone Moon turned to look at a certain person out of habit. But he found that there was no one behind him. There was no familiar figure. Holy shit, where are they? Did she have to disconnect at every critical moment? Hong Meng also seemed to have just realized that Shening and Chef who had been following behind him were gone. He paused. The purple chi just now was too thick, and we got separated from them. Shit! Lone Moon really wanted to curse now. But a strong wind swept past in front of him, with an aura that seemed to destroy everything. Lone Moon turned his hand. The fan in his hand instantly turned into a long sword. He picked up Hong Meng beside him and flashed to the side. Screw it. He could only attack now. Fortunately, although this beast of chaos was powerful, its movements were very slow. It was not completely without a fighting chance. My lord. Hong Meng was a little unsteady. The chaos chi that the huge beast brought could directly corrode the god power in his body. Get lost, don't get in the way. Lone Moon finished speaking and threw Hong Meng out like a ball. Chapter 536. Hong Meng only heard a gust of wind beside his ears. Instantly, he flew out of the range of the chi of chaos. The feeling of suppression on his body disappeared, and his god power recovered. He took 2 breaths, knowing that he could not help, and could only look nervously at the people on the other side. Lone Moon had already rushed up with his sword, forming thousands of sword arrays. The sky full of sword rain began to gather to form a tornado-like shape, directly attacking the beast of chaos. Roar! The beast of chaos let out a loud roar, and the sword array in the sky paused. Lone Moon tightened his grip on the sword, and directly broke through the sound wall. But the moment the blade touched the body of the beast of chaos, the god power attached to the sword dissipated, and it fell from the sky. Lone Moon was stunned, but a giant claw appeared in the sky again, slapping towards him. He barely avoided it with his sword, but was still swept by the residual wind, and the thick chi of chaos rushed towards him. He only felt a pain in his chest, all the god power in his body disappeared, and he spat out blood. He himself was stunned. After becoming the plane assistant, other than dealing with the invading manager, this was the first time he was injured by something else. But the hesitation was only for a moment. He held his sword and rushed over again. But no matter how he attacked, the sword array he formed still did not hit the beast of chaos, and fell directly, unable to hurt it at all. Instead, the injuries on his body increased. Master. I Ching looked at the slightly disheveled Lone Moon, and said with some worry, do we really not need to help Father Nyo? To take over the plane, we have to go through this. Shening said in a low voice, if not this time, there will be a next time. And it would only be more serious. I Ching clenched his fists by his side, but in the end did not attack. On the other side, Father Nyo's situation was getting worse, but after trying so many times, there was still a result. This beast of chaos seemed to be immune to all forms of power in this plane, whether it was god power, immortal chi, or spirit chi. Before it got close, it would be directly dispersed by the aura around it. But fortunately, he still had other abilities. Lone Moon took a deep breath, and for a moment, the immortal chi in his body dissipated. The power that belonged to the plane assistant surged, and his aura changed. He looked like an ordinary person, but he had an irresistible pressure. Even Hong Meng, who was behind him, was shocked and subconsciously took a step back. Lone Moon raised the sword in his hand, and the same sword array appeared once again. But this time, it directly broke through the chaotic chi around the huge beast, and with a swoosh, a hole appeared on its body. The chaos beast let out a deafening howl. It sounded like a scream. Thick black liquid flowed down from the places that were injured by the sword formation, but it dissipated the moment it fell to the ground. Lone Moon continued to attack, and more wounds appeared on the chaos beast. Its huge body began to twist. Only then did Lone Moon see clearly that there was only a huge mouth above its head. There were no eyes, nose, or other facial features. At this time, it was letting out a series of howls, and even the ground was shaking. But its body was really too big. The wounds that Lone Moon made were not fatal to the beast of chaos. Unless there was something that could completely blow up its body, just like the detonator that Shining used to blow up that planet. Damn, how could there be firearms in this Xianxia world? Even if it could be made, he did not know how to make it. Wait a minute. Suddenly, layers of complex arrays flashed in his mind. A large amount of unfamiliar yet familiar knowledge flowed into his mind, and finally turned into the explosive device from before. Holy shit, he really knew how to. Lone Moon was delighted. He immediately flew up above the chaos beast, and began to make seals with his hands. He mobilized all the assistant power in his body, and condensed a complex array. Layers appeared in his hands, and the dazzling white light of the array became brighter and brighter. In an instant, it was as if the whole world that was shrouded in purple chi was illuminated. He finally formed the last array, and mobilized the last bit of energy in his body. He flew directly towards the huge mouth of the chaos beast, and directly entered its body. The next moment, there was a loud bang. Countless rays of white light shot out from the chaos beast's body like sharp blades. Its huge body swelled up instantly. Then, with a loud bang, its entire body exploded, turning into pieces of black meat. Then, it dissipated into wisps of black gas. Only then did Lone Moon let out a breath, and his body relaxed. He did not even have the last bit of energy to fly on his sword, and directly fell from the sky. Chef! Shining hurriedly called out. I Ching instantly flew out, and caught the person who fell from the sky, exhausted. Father Nyo, are you alright? Shining went up and asked. Lone Moon directly rolled his eyes at her. Do you think I look alright? But Shining gave him a spring breeze-like smile. Father Nyo is very powerful. Very powerful indeed. Chef also added. Humph. Lone Moon coldly snorted, as if thinking of something. He added, Stop sucking up, where exactly did the two of you die? Before he finished speaking, there was a loud bang in the sky, the entire sky twisted, and suddenly a huge hole appeared. The black chi that the chaos beast turned into, instantly, seemed to be attracted by something, and madly rushed into that black hole. In less than a moment, it disappeared completely, but that hole did not close. Instead, the suction force became stronger and stronger, even the surrounding purple chi began to rush in. It's the chaos gap. Hong Meng hurriedly flew over, his expression becoming more and more anxious. That chaos beast opened up the chaos gap, what should we do? The chaos can swallow everything. If we do not block it, the entire plane will be dragged into the chaos. Master, this is... I Ching also looked at that black hole in shock, somehow feeling that it was a little familiar. Plane storm. Shining nodded. I Ching frowned. This was a little troublesome, subconsciously looked towards Father Nyo. Could this be sealed? Lone Moon, on the other hand, sighed, looked up at Shining, smiled with some bitterness and said, "It looks like I can't take over this plane." He could vaguely feel that this was already a test. But plane storms could only be handled by the manager and assistant. Defeating that chaos beast had already used up all his strength, now completely did not have any extra strength left to seal this. "You can do it, Father Nyo." But Shining was not the least bit anxious. "Shining, it's not that I don't want to take it, the situation now, simply, you can do it." But Shining interrupted his words, suddenly pulled his hand towards the direction of the plane storm, smiled sweetly and said, "You are the best, Father Nyo." Chapter 537. Lone Moon was stunned. In the next moment, he felt a strong power filling his body. He released it subconsciously. A white light lit up in his palm. In an instant, the surroundings were covered in white. Some special energy shot out in all directions, spreading across the entire plane. And the expanding hole in the sky seemed to be compressed by something. It became smaller and smaller in the white light. Finally, it disappeared in the air, as if it had never been there. The purple chi that surrounded them dissipated. A purple sea appeared below them, but it was slowly shrinking. In a short while, it became the size of a palm. It flew up and stopped steadily in Lone Moon's palm. In the next moment, everything in the entire plane was imprinted in Lone Moon's mind. A new power flowed out of his body. It was 100 times stronger than when he became an assistant. Large amounts of information flowed into his mind. It was as if he could see every corner of the entire plane with just a thought. Although he had this feeling when he became a plane assistant, it was completely different now. It was as if the entire world was in his hands and he could control it. "Sir, you've subdued the original source." Hong Mang looked at the purple spring water in his hand happily. As he spoke, he raised his head. "That's great. This way, you can." He suddenly paused and looked at Lone Moon in front of him. He felt that he was different from just now. The aura on his body suddenly made his legs weak. He knelt down for no reason. You, congratulations, Father Nyo. You've officially become a manager." Shining smiled. I Ching also took a step back. He cupped his fists with a serious expression. "Congratulations, Father Nyo." Lone Moon was stunned. So he had only officially become a manager now. He looked down at the hand that Shining had just grabbed. Then he looked at the original source in the other hand. He felt that Shining had cheated for him just now. "Manager." Sir. Hong Meng then reacted. He stared at Lone Moon with wide eyes. Their plane had a manager so soon. Was he dreaming? Get lost. Lone Moon glared at him. He threw the original source purple chi over. "The original source has been subdued. Go and divide your plane." "Yes, sir." "No problem." Hong Meng nodded repeatedly, with a look of excitement on his face. This was their manager, theirs. Just as he was about to turn and leave, he suddenly thought of something and turned back. "But my lord, I've lost half of my godly power. Separating the two realms is a little. It's really difficult." Before he could finish speaking, Lone Moon reached out and tapped his forehead. Hong Meng felt something rush into his body and all the god power he had lost came back. His eyes widened in shock. This was the power of a manager. You can scram now. Lone Moon waved his hand. Yes, yes. Hong Meng walked away with a dumbfounded look. Lone Moon then turned to face the two people in front of him. His expression darkened. Now, I'll give you a chance to explain. What was going on with that chaos beast? You obviously left me alone to deal with it. The two of them looked at each other before I Ching explained, that was a test for you. What test? Lone Moon frowned. Father Nyo, it's not that easy to take over a plane, I Ching said in a low voice. Only by gaining the plane's approval can one be a true manager. There's no world consciousness here and the heavenly Tao was born because of you. So only by gaining the approval of the original source purple chi can one be a true manager. You've already done that just now. So that chaos beast was my test and I can only deal with it myself. Lone Moon was stunned. Yes. I Ching nodded. If Master and I fought, it would affect the original source's judgment. Then what about what I did before? Was it a trial period? You could say that. He nodded. You allowed the heavenly Tao to be born, so you already have the right to become a manager. So the heavenly Tao was just an entry test. Lone Moon turned to look at Chef and frowned. How do you know so clearly? Wait. Why is the aura on your body? His eyes widened as if he thought of something. Holy shit, when did you become a manager too? Lone Moon couldn't tell when he was an assistant before, but now that he was a manager, he realized that the aura on his body was exactly the same as his. I Ching stiffened and decided to be straightforward. Ever since Master woke up from her hibernation, I've been one. Lone Moon turned to glare at Shining. Can you be any more King lazy? 2 planes were thrown to them just like that. Father Nyo, don't mind such details. Shining hurriedly handed over a fruit. Want some fruit? Get lost. Do you think I'm a mushroom? Coaxing him with a fruit. He thought for a moment before continuing. Wait, if I have to get the plane's approval to become a manager, then that plane transfer contract you gave me back then was a fake, right? Shining stiffened. Her eyes shifted and she silently kept the fruit. She said seriously, Chef, what time is it? Is it time for lunch? Don't try to change the topic. This change of topic was too harsh. Lone Moon glared at her, his face as black as the bottom of a pot. You two are working together to trick me, right? Or have you been since Chef became a manager? No, it's not that far. I Ching hurriedly interrupted. I only found out about this when I was in the southern land, so I have to calculate from there. Is there a difference? I Ching, Shining, all right, there's no difference. The 2 poor people trembled. A while later, forget it. Strangely, Lone Moon did not fly into a rage. His expression became calm again. He glanced at Shining. I've already accepted it, there's no other way. Father Nyo is the best. Father Nyo is domineering. Go to hell. Lone Moon directly rewarded them with an eye roll. He looked at the sky that suddenly began to darken. He could faintly see the horizon not far away, beginning to distort and change shape. It seemed that primordial chaos had already begun to divide. He directly turned to open the plane passage. Let's return to the divine realm first, the division has already begun. In the next moment, the 3 of them arrived in that pitch-black divine realm. There was only a golden tree standing in it. The only difference was that beside the golden tree, there was a purple tree slowly rising, slowly extending its branches. This was the plane that Lone Moon had just taken over. What's up with this tree? Lone Moon turned to look at Shining. Oh, I conveniently connected that plane with the divine realm. Shining casually explained. It's more convenient this way. Chapter 538. Lone Moon sensed for a while, indeed, the entire divine realm was connected to that plane, as if this was the common space of the two planes. Perhaps because Hongmeng was still dividing the world, the purple tree was still growing. However, it did not look as thick and strong as the golden tree. Even the top of the tree only had one or two pitifully small leaves. After all, it was a small world that had not been born for long. Lone Moon took a look and did not pay any more attention, waiting for the division to be completed. With a thought, the pitch-black divine realm immediately changed. Apart from the two plain trees, a large patch of green grass appeared. Chef instructed, "Master, I'm going to cook." With that said, he turned and walked away, taking out pots and pans with practiced ease. Lone Moon waved his hand, directly conjuring a table and chairs on the spot. After thinking for a while, he changed the table and chairs to a more comfortable sofa and coffee table. He even made 2 cups of tea and handed one to Shining. "Here." "Oh." Shining took it and drank a mouthful, then continued to nibble on her fruit. Lone Moon turned and sat on the sofa at the side, then stared hard at the person opposite, until the person was a little scared, felt that the fruit was a little changed, really could not hold it in anymore and said, "Sigh, ask away." "Honestly, why did you do this?" Lone Moon asked directly. "If you're just lazy and don't want to manage, you're not that diligent now, are you? You don't have to do this at all." "Ah, I'm not chef." Lone Moon's eyes darkened, his expression serious, but there was some faint worry in his eyes. Suddenly thinking of something, his eyes widened abruptly. "Did something happen to you again?" "Not really." Shining sighed, turned to look at Chef who was cooking, put down the fruit in her hand, then said seriously, "It's just that after I woke up from hibernation last time, I found some changes." "What changes?" Lone Moon instantly tensed up. "I can't say either." Shining shook her head. "I just felt that I shouldn't continue managing the plane, so I transferred it to you. Then will you be all right?" "No, this is not a bad change." "Really? Really?" Father Nyo's tense nerves finally relaxed. He thought for a moment and asked, "Does your sister know?" "Why don't we tell her?" Although he was a demon king, he was much more reliable than Shining at crucial times. Shining stiffened. "There's no need. If she knew, she would have seen it the last time I woke up." Lone Moon thought about it and agreed. Given Shinjing's level of sister complex, she should have discovered it long ago. She did not discover Shinying's change. Even she could not detect it. "Don't worry, Father Nyo." Shining continued to nibble on her fruit. "Who knows, before long, I'll know the reason. But now that you've transferred the plane to us, then what are you now? Would there really be no problems? Aren't we your assistants? Now you're so..." Before he could finish, Shining suddenly tapped his forehead. He felt a chill on his forehead, and in an instant, a black and white pattern floated out of his body. "This is Assistant Seal," Lone Moon exclaimed. This was the assistant seal that Shining had given them. "Why is it still here?" Shining retracted her hand, and the seal returned to Lone Moon's body. "So, even if I'm no longer the manager, you're still my assistants." In other words, they only changed their job titles to sound nicer, but in reality, they were still working for her. Why did she suddenly want to resign? However, it was good that nothing happened to her. The assistant seal was still there, that proved that there was no problem with her cheat, and he could not sense the situation when she used too much energy the last time. He did not want to experience the dormant period of Shin 15 again. Littling could still consider it. Lone Moon glanced at her, his eyes darkening. After drinking half a cup of tea, he continued to ask, "Since you're fine, why didn't you tell me about taking over the plane from the start?" Shining faltered and turned to look at him. After a while, she tilted her head and said, "To get a few more months of food allowance." Get lost. Lone Moon rolled his eyes. When have I ever been short of you? Every time he said to deduct it, he still gave it to her in the end. He snatched the fruit from her hand. Little heartless. You're afraid that I'll overthink, aren't you? That's why you dragged Chef along to hide it from me. Shining did not speak, but continued to take out a new one, still chewing on it lazily. Lone Moon did not continue asking, but asked instead, "What's the matter with Chef? I didn't see any changes in him before, how did he suddenly become a manager?" "Because time is up." Shining then explained lazily, he was originally the manager chosen by the realm's consciousness, and God Fiend and Kai Tian were too anxious, so they pulled me to this plane. Chef had not grown up yet, and my power was higher than his. So... Lone Moon was shocked. When you took over the plane directly chose you, and gave up on Chef. Shining nodded, and added after thinking, "It's not considered giving up, his power has been growing. It was only during the battle with the invading manager that he completely grew into a manager, so I handed him over." Shit, no wonder he was a little cheat all the way. So from the beginning, the plane opened a back door for him, this bunch of cheat dogs. Lone Moon complained. After a while he seemed to think of something, and turned to look at Shining with a strange expression. "Don't tell me you were worried that I would feel unbalanced, so you kept it from me, and gave me the other plane as a consolation prize." After all, they were both assistants, and one of them was suddenly promoted. No matter what, she would feel a little upset. What's more, to think about it, he was the innocent person who was pulled into this world. Lone Moon stopped chewing on the fruit, then turned to look at him. His expression was rare serious. "It's not a consolation prize. I planned to do this from the beginning, because Father Nyo is indeed very outstanding." Lone Moon choked, suddenly feeling a little awkward, subconsciously wanted to touch her forehead. "You're praising me so seriously, are you stupid?" He was a little not used to not being stabbed in the back. "Can we talk properly?" Shen Ying's mouth twitched, and after a while she continued. "Father Nyo, it's not that easy to gain the recognition of the plane." She took a deep breath. "Back then, my sister blocked countless plane invasions before she completely controlled the entire plane. Chef worked hard for 3,000 years in order to cross the plane to find us, and even reloaded once, and I didn't even have the right to be born at the beginning. They could not make a wrong move, or they would lose everything." Lone Moon faltered. That's why they did not tell him the truth in advance, in case he was distracted, so that they could focus on taking over that plane. As for whether he wanted to be a manager, of course he wanted to. Chapter 539. Although it was troublesome to be Shen Ying's assistant, he did not think there was anything bad about it. However, anyone would be willing to take a step further. Although he had previously complained about them forcefully dragging him into the water, he actually didn't have much resentment towards them. This had nothing to do with feelings. It was an opportunity that anyone with the slightest bit of ambition would want to grasp. He tried to think about it. If he had known from the beginning that Chef was already a manager. Although it wasn't to the extent of jealousy, he would still feel a little pressured. If Shining had asked him to be the manager of Hongming's plane at that time, he would have agreed in the end. On one side was a successful manager Chef, while on the other side was a prospective manager. Their mentality would naturally be affected. Taking over the plane was so dangerous, so it was better to not know anything from the start. For some reason, he suddenly understood why Shen Jing objected so strongly when Shining wanted to take over the plane. It was because she had experienced that period herself, so she was even more afraid that she would be in danger. Shen Jing had always suggested that she reopen the plane. Now that she thought about it, this new plane was indeed a lot easier for her. So, was Shining giving him the safest task? Shining. He suddenly felt a warmth in his heart. Ha! Shining turned around. The corners of Lone Moon's mouth unconsciously widened. The words were at the tip of his tongue, but he did not know how to say them. He felt that no matter what he said, it would be a little pretentious and not in line with his noble persona. Hence, he reached out and touched her head. After a while, he squeezed out 2 words, silly. He was clearly so lazy that he would starve to death if he wasn't watched closely. But he thought more than any of them. However, she was still a good daughter who knew how to dote on her father. He suddenly felt that he could raise her a little more. Shining was stunned. She looked at the claws on her head and quickly finished the fruit in her mouth. Then, she grabbed her storage bag tightly. Father no, yes. Let's get straight to the point. Can you stop smiling at me? I'm a little confused. She kept having the illusion that she was missing something. Lone Moon's outstretched hand stiffened, and his expression darkened. His hand, which was originally stroking her hair, turned around and forcefully rubbed her head. He successfully rubbed her hair, which was originally not very smooth, into a bird's nest. Sure enough, she was still that troublesome one. He must have been blind to be touched just now. Shining, Ching, sigh. Indeed, Father Nyo, who had entered menopause, could not understand it all. When Hong Mang came over with a tired but excited expression, the people from God's domain just happened to be eating. Lone Moon and Shining sat on the left and right of each other. It was as if they were comparing hand speeds. The chopsticks in their hands moved like shadows across the table. More than 10 dishes on the table disappeared quickly. I Ching was standing behind Shining, one hand holding onto her hair, the other holding a comb. He was seriously combing her hair. Perhaps it was because Shining was snatching the food too fiercely, and I Ching's movements were light, so strands of hair slipped through his hands from time to time. He had no choice but to let go and smooth them back from the beginning. He seemed to have been combing for a long time, but he still tirelessly combed his hair over and over again. Hong Mang vaguely felt that something had been stuffed into his mouth. He turned his head and looked at his manager, who was busy fighting for food. Speaking of which, did Boss Lone Moon not feel it, or was he used to it? Ahem, boss. He coughed and couldn't help but shout. Ever since he knew that Lone Moon was their manager, Hong Mang very sensibly changed the way he addressed him. The 2 people fighting for food paused. The 3 people present turned to look at him, and then, turned back again. The one fighting for food snatched the food, and the one combing his hair. It was as if they didn't care about his arrival at all. Hong Mang. He suddenly felt a little heart-wrenching. It wasn't until all the food on the table had been wiped clean, Ching's hair was tied up, and he began to clean up the bowls and chopsticks that the few of them had time to pay attention to him. Why are you here again? Lone Moon glanced at him. He still looked like that sage-like Taoist. There was no trace of the bold and fierce look he had when he was fighting for food just now. Boss, I've completed the task you gave me. Hong Mang answered with some excitement. In the future, our plane is complete. Who's with you? The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He said it as if there was something going on. Hong Mang. He suddenly felt a sense of danger of being fired. What are you here for? Lone Moon asked. Hong Mang then pointed to the plane tree at the side and answered, Boss, the division has been completed. It was only then that Lone Moon turned back to look in the direction of the plane tree. Indeed, the plane tree that was just a small tree earlier was already as tall as the one beside it. It extended out countless branches, and even intertwined with the golden branches of the plane tree beside it. Especially because the purple one was smaller, and the 2 trees were so close to each other, it gave people the illusion that they were leaning on each other. As the manager, Lone Moon could naturally sense everything that the entire plane tree sensed, including the manager of the golden plane tree, Chef. Lone Moon instantly felt goosebumps all over his body. He subconsciously turned his head and happened to meet Chef's gaze. Their eyes met and they both trembled. Then, they turned their heads in unison. Og, Hongmeng, Shining, Sir, Boss Lone Moon, what's going on? Hongmeng looked confused. Why did the two of them suddenly vomit? Hey, you don't understand if you're not in the circle. Shining patted his shoulder. Continue growing straight. Hongmeng. What did she mean? Did he miss something? Shining, do these two plane trees need to be so close to each other? Can't they move a little? She made it seem like he was hugging Chef. It looked disgusting. Master, since the purple one is still small, why don't we plant it again? Chef also suggested. Hongmeng's face paled. Don't be rash. Do you really think it's a tree that can be planted everywhere? This is a plane. There's no other way. Shining took out a fruit and said while biting. These two planes were originally close to each other. Back then, they were too lazy to run, so they directly opened it beside them. Unless we reopen one. The two frowned. Thinking of Shinying's hibernation, they could only give up on the idea of moving the tree. The two exchanged another look, then turned their heads and continued vomiting. Shining went forward to take a look. That newly grown purple tree, compared to the luxuriant one beside it, looked a little pitiful. There were only 1 or 2 visible leaves on the branches. Sir, this plane tree is divided into 3 realms in total. Seeing that the other 2 were vomiting and really couldn't listen, Hongmeng immediately introduced to Shining like he was presenting a treasure. I divided it according to the boundaries of this plane. Chapter 540. Hongmeng pointed at the plane tree and said, the 3 realms are the human and demon realms, the immortal and demon realms, and the divine underworld. But the human and demon races are weak now, and there are not many of them. So I set up boundaries between each realm. Although the 2 races are in the same realm, they are separated from each other. The immortal and demon realms are the same, but no one from the lower realm has ascended yet, so there are no people inside, only some low-level divine races inside. Oh. Shining looked at the bare branches. Why are there no leaves? This is because the realms have just been divided, the human race has not yet flourished, and this small world has not formed the 3,000 realms. Hongmeng explained, when the human race grows up, there will be more realms, forming the 3,000 realms. And if someone from the immortal and divine realms opens up a mystic realm, and is recognized by the heavenly Tao, it can also grow into a world. Then will it bear fruit? Shining asked. Hongmeng stiffened. What kind of stupid question was that? Don't really treat it like a tree. After a while, he laughed dryly. He. Madam must be joking. How can it bear? Oh, then what's that on the tree? Shining reached out and pointed to the middle of the 2 trees, where the leaves were the most luxuriant. Hongmeng looked over, and saw that in the gap between the purple and gold, there was a strange red color, and a round object was hidden in the layers of leaves. There's really fruit. BBB boss. Hongmeng was completely stunned, and looked around frantically, turned around and pulled Lone Moon, saying, Boss, stop vomiting, look at the tree. Fruit, look, there's fruit. What fruit? Lone Moon really could not stand the 2 trees, and did not even look in that direction. Hongmeng could only turn him around. It's the plane tree. There's fruit on the plane tree, never, He stopped mid-sentence, and the next moment, his eyes widened. Wait, Madam Shining, why are you climbing the tree? Hey, that's the plane tree. Every leaf is a small world, not to mention the fruit. He subconsciously wanted to stop her, but it was too late. Shining had already climbed up, her hand already reaching for the bright red fruit. Wait. You can't pluck that, the realm will collapse. With a plop, the fruit landed in her hands. She then turned to look at him. What did you say? Hong Meng, then, nothing happened. No, nothing. Hee, as long as you guys are happy, my heart is so tired. Why were the three of them so unreliable? He suddenly felt that the future of the two planes was bleak. Master. Chef, who had finally recovered from vomiting, walked over and helped the person down from the tree. He glanced at the fruit in her hand. What is this? I don't know. It's an apple, right? Shining looked at the fruit. Why don't we eat it? With that, she opened her mouth and tried to bite it. Lone Moon snatched it from her. Eat your sister. Eat. He glared at her, thought for a moment, then took out a bag of pastries and stuffed it into her hand in exchange. Only then did he seriously look at the fruit in his hand. This is obviously a space. Moreover, it was a space even larger than a small world. The strange thing was that his divine sense could not enter it at all. This thing doesn't seem to belong to this plane. I Ching also sensed the otherworldly aura on the fruit. He frowned. Why would it grow on the plane tree? It doesn't grow on the tree. Shining suddenly spoke. The two faltered. What do you mean? Didn't you climb the tree and pluck it? Shining looked down, then turned back to look under the tree. She picked something up and said, it was tied to the tree. The two looked and realized that it was a thin white ribbon. They could not tell what it was made of, but it was glowing slightly like moonlight. Lone Moon pulled it over and looked closely. He found that the ribbon was so light that it seemed weightless, just like real moonlight. This is also not something from our plane. Lone Moon's expression darkened. Could it be that someone secretly tied this fruit to the plane tree when we were not around? But the plane tree and the manager were connected telepathically. If someone did something, they should be able to sense it immediately. To be able to leave this behind without anyone knowing, the other party's ability was definitely not below that of a manager. It can't be another plane manager, right? Were managers mass-produced these days? Father Nyo, can I take a look at this ribbon? I Ching said in a low voice. Lone Moon directly handed it over. He looked carefully at the light on the ribbon. After some thought, he directly sent a bit of immortal qi into it. In an instant, that ribbon floated up and turned into several rays of light. It slowly bent into a row of unfamiliar characters. This is a message. Lone Moon was stunned. It should be an invitation. Shining suddenly said. She stepped forward and reached out towards the white light in the air. Immediately, those characters were disrupted. In the next moment, those characters recombined into words that they were familiar with. There was only a row of eye-catching big words written on it, sincerely inviting the two managers of the Immortal Spirit Plane to join the Plane Alliance Organization, Big Tao Organization. All managers of this organization look forward to your union. Sincerely, greetings. Big Tao Organization instantly. What is this? Lone Moon frowned. What does it mean? A civilian organization of managers? Master, have you heard of this Big Tao organization? Shining replied as she ate her pastry. I seem to have heard of it somewhere. I don't really remember. No matter what, this is specifically related to managers. Lone Moon guessed. Could it be that plane management also has some related organization? Yes. Shining said casually. The administrative committee is it? What administrative committee? The two were shocked. It's the Plane Managers Association. Shining said calmly. Didn't I tell you before? Lone Moon, I Ching, can you change your habit of saying things after the fact? Can you still change it? Tell me about that administrative committee first. Lone Moon took a deep breath. What was with this feeling of helplessness that he was already used to? It's not a big deal. Shining stuffed another piece of pastry into her mouth. Then she said vaguely, it's just a non-official, informal association formed by managers who are familiar with each other. Unless there's a problem, they don't contact each other even if there's a problem. What was with this feeling that it was getting more and more unreliable? Since it was so trashy, then what was the point of building an association? Were they that bored? Basically, the upper planes and planes are completely independent, but sometimes there will be some small interactions between them. Shining then slowly explained to them. In short, it was related to plane transmigration. Sometimes, those people who entered other planes actually didn't mean to invade. They could just enter accidentally. For example, being pulled in by a plane storm, being trapped in a plane gap and so on. Chapter 541. Although people who were accidentally pulled into other planes basically had a slim chance of survival, there were always exceptions. There were even managers or assistants who, when crossing planes, got the wrong direction and transmigrated to someone else's house. At this time, the manager naturally had to bring the person back. This would inevitably cause them to meet the manager of the other plane. This happened so often that the managers found it troublesome. And because the planes existed in different forms, misunderstandings and fights were inevitable. So slowly, the familiar plane managers formed a circle. This was the administrative committee. There were no official managers, everyone was just in name and did not invade each other, they just had to inform each other when something happened. Back when Kai Tian accidentally entered my sister's plane, it was also because he had connections with the administrative committee that my sister let him become an assistant after he informed them. Shining gave an example, thought for a while, and added, things like plane passes were also thought of by the management committee. Lone Moon's and Yi Qing's faces darkened, they instantly thought of that stupid A4 paper. How casual was this administrative committee? Managers are all very busy, we basically don't meet often. Oh yes, I even won an award from the association when I was studying. With that said, she suddenly switched on a light screen and clicked. The next moment, a certificate instantly popped up on the light screen. On it was written, Certificate of Award Student Shining, in this year's Learning of Plane Assistant Skills, your results are outstanding, you have been awarded the title of Outstanding Assistant Student, specially issued this certificate as encouragement. Plane Manager Committee Random Year, Random Month, Random Day. There was even a bright red stamp on it. Lone Moon, Qing, this really was a very casual association. Why would a group of high-level managers form such a casual association? So, this big DAO organization might be like the administrative committee, a casual, Apui, an association formed by the managers of various planes? Lone Moon asked. Maybe. Shining said casually. Master is so familiar with the administrative committee, should we join? Yi Qing asked. We can join. Shining frowned. But my sister is a member too, do you want to join? Their expressions changed at the same time, and the tone of their conversation changed in an instant. Let's talk about this big DAO organization. What's with this fruit? Lone Moon looked at the fruit in his hand. They invited us to join this big DAO organization, why did they send this space that looks like a fruit over? It was not accurate to call it a space. He could feel the unending vitality in this fruit, which meant that this fruit was a complete world. Shining shook her head, not sure either. Why don't we eat? Why don't we go in and take a look? You said you wanted to eat it, so you definitely meant it, right? I think that although the ribbon is an invitation, the fruit is probably a guide, Yi Qing guessed. You mean to say? Lone Moon paused. The space inside the fruit is probably where the big street club is. Yes. Yi Qing nodded. What's more, this fruit might not be the actual body of that space, but a Dharma body, just like the entrance to a mystic realm. Lone Moon hesitated for a moment and directly sent a bit of immortal chi into it. Indeed, he could not find out what was going on inside the fruit. It really was a fake fruit. It seemed like they had to go and take a look to find out what the so-called Big Tao organization was. Then let's go and take a look. What's more, it was already written clearly as an invitation, so it should not have any ill intentions. Perhaps they could really see some managers of other planes. Do we really have to go? I Ching frowned. He felt that something was amiss about this matter. Since they have a way to tie this fruit to the plane tree without us noticing, they might have other tricks up their sleeves. Lone Moon said. Whether they are friend or foe, we have to go and meet them. I Ching was silent for a while and did not object. Boss. Hong Meng, who was at the side, was shocked. He looked at Lone Moon with tears in his eyes. You want to leave the plane? That's too dangerous. Their plane had just stabilized, how could they just leave it like that? We'll be back soon, it won't take much time. Lone Moon glanced at him. Your god power has already recovered, go and help Rabbit manage the divine race. And Fatty, go and help him when you're free. But what about this plane? How about I go too? What has this got to do with you? Lone Moon rolled his eyes. Don't worry, I can sense anything. You can scram now. With that said, he opened the plane passage and chased Hong Meng back. Let's go. After clearing the area, Lone Moon walked back. Just as he was about to set off, he glanced at Shining and added, don't get lost again. Oh. With that said, he clenched his fist and crushed the fruit in his hand. Indeed, a white light enveloped the three of them and they disappeared from the divine realm in the next moment. Lone Moon thought that since the so-called Big Tao organization was built by the managers, it would be high class. Yet with a flash of white light, they arrived on a busy street. There were people coming and going all around, it was very lively. There were many stalls on the street, some selling food, some selling toys, and some selling daily necessities. It looked like a street for mortals and did not look like the office of a management organization at all. How could this be? What happened to leading the way? Did the fruit expire? Master. Father Nyo. I Ching's expression changed as he said in a daze, the god power in my body, disappeared. What? Lone Moon was shocked. He subconsciously sensed his body. Indeed, his body was empty. Not to mention god power, there wasn't even a trace of immortal chi. He tried using his spirit power, but there was still no reaction. How could this be? Because it's outside the plane. Shining said. The two of them stared blankly and then reacted. That's right, that fruit didn't belong to their plane in the first place, and this looked like a mortal realm. It was normal that there was no immortal spirit chi. But since that Big Tao organization invited them here, why did they let them enter this mortal realm? Regretted midway. Did they want to trap them here? But although this place restricted cultivators, they were managers. If they wanted to go back, they could open the plane door anytime. Let's scout around first. Lone Moon looked at the sky and suggested. Perhaps because there was something special about that fruit, they suddenly appeared on the street, but no one was alarmed. It was as if they had been here all along. Chapter 542. The few of them wanted to go out of the city to take a look, but found that the city gates were already closed. There seemed to be some sort of restriction set up by the city, and they couldn't just fly out. Let's find a place to stay first. Lone Moon then turned and led the master and disciple to an inn at the side. Are the two of you eating or staying? The innkeeper immediately came up to them and asked enthusiastically. We're staying, Lone Moon replied. He turned to look at Shining and added, we're eating too. Prepare 3 superior rooms for us, just send the food up. 3 rooms. Wasn't it 2? The innkeeper faltered and looked up at them. Only then did he see Shining in the middle, but he didn't mind and said even more enthusiastically, 3 superior rooms, a total of 30 coins per night. This way please. With that said, he called a waiter over and led them to the back hall. Lone Moon followed directly, but the master and disciple stopped in their tracks when they heard this. They tugged at the parent in front and couldn't help but ask worriedly, Father Nyo, this is the mortal realm, do we have money? Dharma spells weren't working now, and spirit stones and immortal stones couldn't be used either. Nonsense. Lone Moon rolled his eyes at him. When did he ever lack money? Then he explained, haven't we used up the money that the unlucky fellow dug up last time? Oh, the 2 of them sighed like they were poor, and both gave him a thumbs up. Reliable. While leading the way, Lone Moon used his business instincts and asked the waiter about the news in the city. It turned out that the place they were in now was called Wuling City, the only city within a radius of 1,000 miles. There weren't any officials here, and the one in charge was a city lord with the surname Han. And there really weren't any cultivators here. Immortals were even more of a legend, and the waiter directly called it a scam. He then asked if there were any strange things happening in the city recently, and the waiter also shook his head and said he didn't know. This looked like a very ordinary mortal city. The more Lone Moon asked, the more confused he became. He completely didn't know what the so-called Big Tao organization was trying to do by leading them here. None of the people in this city looked like a manager. Seeing that the sky was already dark, the few of them could only stay first. This place is strange and there are no cultivators here. Since it's night time, we should take advantage of it to explore our surroundings. Lone Moon suggested. That Big Tao organization must have a reason for sending us to such a place. He turned to look at Yi Qing. Chef, you go to the East City to take a look. I'll go to the West City. As for Shining. He paused. You stay here and sleep. In case she gets lost. Oh. Don't run around. We might not be able to pick you up here. After all, this was another plane. Don't worry, everything will be fine. When she said this, she became even more worried. What should she do? Lone Moon looked at her worriedly. After a while, he got up and was about to go out. Suddenly, he heard light footsteps coming from outside the door. It was as if the footsteps were deliberately light, heading straight to the left. Someone went into the next room. Yi Qing frowned. The 2 rooms next door were booked by them, and the one on the left was his. It was only because Father Nyo had something to tell them that they came to Master's room to discuss it. They couldn't use sorcery here. It was very inconvenient. For a moment, they didn't know who it was. Lone Moon also felt that it was strange. Just as he was about to go out to take a look, Chef pulled him. It's coming. Indeed, the footsteps came from the next room and headed straight here. It walked very slowly, as if it was weighing its feet. After a while, a figure appeared on the window. It lowered its body. Then, there was a soft poof. A small hole appeared in the window paper. A thin bamboo tube stretched in and blew out waves of white smoke. Lone Moon, Yi Qing, Shining, this was poison. What kind of godlike luck was this? They actually encountered a black shop. They had seen many demons and ghosts. This was the first time the 3 of them saw such a pure and unpretentious trick to harm people. They suddenly had the urge to not expose him. They had to cooperate with him and act. Lone Moon sighed. In the end, he controlled himself and pushed the door open. He looked at the figure who was leaning against the window and blowing the smoke in. Is it fun? That person was startled by the sudden appearance of the person, and in a moment of carelessness, he choked and inhaled a mouthful of smoke. Immediately, he coughed painfully, and then his eyes rolled back, and he fainted on the ground with a thud. Father Nyo, who did nothing, he walked forward to take a look. Indeed, it was the waiter who led them in. With this kind of psychological quality, where did he get the courage to run a black shop? I Ching also walked out. Looking at the person on the ground, his expression darkened. What do we do with this person? How would I know? I have no experience in this kind of thing. Lone Moon also looked helpless. I just came out and he choked himself and fainted. I Ching thought about it. Then, he took 2 steps forward. Out of habit, he conjured a seal. Then he remembered that there was no spirit chi here and he couldn't use sorcery. So he bent his finger and pressed on the person's most painful acupuncture point. Ah! In the next moment, the waiter cried out in pain and sat up like a corpse. He rubbed the place that was pressed and looked up at the two. A look of confusion flashed in his eyes. He immediately woke up. You guys. He crawled backward in a panic. As he crawled, he shouted, Wang Er, Zhu Si. What are you screaming for? Before he finished shouting, 2 more people ran up from the other side. They were holding big knives in their hands. It seemed that they had been waiting below for a long time. I told you to be gentler. No, they're not asleep. They're awake. They're awake. The waiter hurriedly pointed in their direction. There was still panic on his face. Only then did the 2 people look over. They paused for a moment but immediately came over with knives with fierce expressions. Even if they're awake, we'll still send them on their way. With that said, they raised the knives in their hands and directly slashed. That slash was very ordinary. There was no technical content to speak of. It was so ordinary that it was just an ordinary slash. It had been too long since he saw such an ordinary move. Even Lone Moon felt that it was a little novel. He subconsciously raised his hand and grabbed the tip of the knife. But he accidentally used too much force. There was only a cracking sound. The sharp blade was directly crushed by him. The person holding the knife paled. He looked at his broken knife in disbelief. Only then did he realize that he had hit an iron plate. He turned and wanted to run. Lone Moon didn't say much. He directly knocked the person unconscious. On the other side, Chef also dealt with the other criminal. The waiter who had just woken up was quite sensible. With a plop, he knelt on the ground. 2 heroes, spare me. I won't dare to do it again. I won't dare to do it again. With that said, he began to kowtow. Chapter 543. Tell me, how many people are there in this inn? Lone Moon asked directly. No more. The waiter replied as he trembled. There are only 3 of us in this inn, I was forced by the 2 of them. Lone Moon naturally did not believe him. He was about to ask in detail when suddenly there was a scream. It sounded like a woman's voice. Lone Moon glanced at Chef. It's downstairs. He was about to go downstairs when he instructed, bring Shining along. With that said, he brought the waiter downstairs. He saw that the door to one of the guest rooms downstairs was wide open, and there was a girl sitting on the floor, looking in the direction of the room with a terrified expression. Seeing him coming over, she screamed again and crawled backward. Don't kill me. Lone Moon ignored her and went straight into the room to take a look. Only then did he realize that there was blood on the bed. There was an old man lying on the bed, already dead, his body covered with knife wounds. There was also an open package scattered on the floor. He instantly understood what the 2 people with knives were doing downstairs. He raised his hand and threw the waiter over. You did it. No, it's them. They killed her. I only knocked her out, it has nothing to do with me. The waiter hurriedly argued. Lone Moon could not be bothered to listen anymore. He directly knocked the waiter out, and then looked at the girl on the floor. She seemed to be scared out of her wits, looking at Lone Moon with even more wariness and fear. It was only when Chef walked in with Shining that she seemed to react. Perhaps because she was of the same sex, she crawled toward Shining, clutching tightly at the corner of her clothes. She still looked like she was in shock. Shining was stunned. What happened? I Ching asked. Someone was killed, Lone Moon replied. He glanced at the girl on the floor. She should know the people in this room. Let's go out first. I Ching nodded, obviously smelling the thick stench of blood in the room. He glanced at the girl who was still clutching Shining tightly and explained, We are also guests staying here, we will not harm you. The girl was stunned for a moment before regaining some of her senses. She followed them out with a look of horror on her face. The few of them sat down on the chairs in the courtyard. The woman clutched the teacup in front of her tightly. She had finally recovered, but her hands were still trembling. It seemed that she was quite frightened. After a while, she looked at the few of them gratefully. Thank you, everyone, for saving me. She had also realized that the other party was not a cup person. She had escaped death. Don't worry, it's nothing. Lone Moon frowned. Initially, he had found it interesting, but now that someone had died, his mood became heavy. Miss, you are also a customer of this inn. Yes. She nodded, took a sip of the tea, and then explained, I'm from the South City, and I came here with Grandma Wong from the same village to look for my family. It was only when she arrived that she found out that her family had already moved away. She wanted to stay here for a night before setting off for home. I didn't expect that in the middle of the night, Grandma Wong would. As she spoke, her tears fell. Lone Moon's expression darkened. He didn't expect that this inn specialized in scamming outsiders. Then the people who committed the crime. The girl suddenly thought of something, and her body trembled again. Don't worry. Lone Moon answered. They won't wake up until dawn. The waiter said that there were only 3 people in the inn. They shouldn't have accomplices. She heaved a sigh of relief. She turned to look in the direction of the room, and then immediately turned back in fear. With some hesitation, she said, This is a murder case. Benefactors, are you planning to report it to the authorities? Report to the authorities. Lone Moon paused, then remembered that such things happened in the mortal world. The police had to be called. You're right, we do have to report it to the authorities. But we're not familiar with this place, we don't know where to report it. Report to the city lord residence, of course. The girl looked at him with some surprise, as if surprised that he did not know such a simple thing. She stood up and pointed in the direction of the east. The city lord residence is in the east of the city. There's no curfew in the city now. We have to quickly inform them. Lone Moon thought about it, then stood up and said, I'll go alone. He turned back to Chef and said, Look after Shining. Chef nodded. Only then did he turn and walk out. Instead, the girl was stunned. She looked back and forth between the 3 of them. Weren't they looking after those fainted criminals? Why were they looking after this girl? Once Father Nyo left, he did not return for 4 hours. As Shining waited, she became hungry. Chef was bored. He turned to the kitchen to make supper. At that moment, only Shining and the girl who survived were left in the courtyard. The courtyard became quiet. The only sounds in the courtyard were the sound of a certain person chewing on fruit and the occasional sound of cooking in the kitchen. Want some? Shining handed a fruit over. The girl was stunned. She hesitated for a moment before taking it. "Thank you, Mississippi." Perhaps it was because she was frightened, but there was still a trace of fear in her eyes. She thought of something and asked tentatively, "May I know how to address you, Miss?" "Shining." "So it's Miss Shin." "My name is Fong Fong." May I know why Miss Shin and the other two came to Wuling City?" "I don't know." "Ha." Fong Fong was stunned. What did he mean by "don't know"? She was stunned. She did not take it to heart. She casually said a few more words. Seeing that she was focused on chewing on her fruit, it was not good for her to ask more. The atmosphere became cold. She suddenly felt a little restless. After thinking for a moment, she said, "The weather is cold tonight. How about I make a pot of tea for you?" "Sure." Shining nodded. She then stood up and walked to the front yard. At that moment, Shining was the only one left in the huge yard. Chef's supper was not ready yet. She was bored waiting. What's more, this city was built by the river and connected to the sea. The other side of the yard was a view of the river. From time to time, there would be a gust of wind from the river, carrying a faint sharp moan, as if someone was singing in a low voice. Shining was stunned. She subconsciously looked back and saw that a figure had appeared on a rock by the river. It was a man with long dark green hair. He looked very flirtatious. His upper body was bare, but his lower body had a huge fish tail. He was sitting on a rock by the river, singing in a low voice while smiling at her seductively. Shining only took a glance, then turned back and continued chewing on her fruit. That man was stunned for a moment, as if surprised by her reaction. Then he opened his mouth again and sang even louder than before. That fragmented voice was like a song that seduced one's soul, making one lose their mind. Shining was stunned. She turned back to look at him again, then continued chewing on her fruit. Chapter 544. The man was a little annoyed. He frowned and clenched his fists by his side. Seeming to have thought of something, he took out a luminous pearl out of nowhere and threw it at her. It rolled all the way to a certain someone's feet. Shining lowered her head to take a look. Not to mention picking it up, she ignored it and continued to focus on the fruit in her hand. The man had no choice but to take out a bigger one and throw it out. Shining still ignored it. The man seemed to want to drag it out with her. He continued to throw luminous pearls, and each one was bigger than the one before. At first, Shining would look down to take a look, but later on, she didn't even look. Until the man took out a fist-sized pearl and threw it over. The huge luminous pearl hit her hand with a plop. Shining didn't catch it and the fruit in her hand fell to the ground. Shin Ying's face darkened. She stared at the half of the fruit on the ground for a while and narrowed her eyes. Then, she stood up and picked up the biggest luminous pearl and turned around. The man was delighted. He immediately continued to sing to her, wanting to confuse her in one fell swoop. Just as he started to sing, he heard the other party suddenly say, "Only you know how to throw, right?" With that said, he threw the luminous pearl back. Before the man could react, he felt a gust of strong wind sweeping toward him. Something flew past his ear with a whoosh. With an aura that could break through everything, it flew toward the river surface behind him. The next moment, he heard a whoosh. The entire river surface was instantly split into two by something. Immediately after, a loud rumble came from the opposite mountain. In the middle of the entire mountain peak, a huge circular hole was suddenly blasted open. At a glance, one could even see the endless sea on the other side of the hole. The man, what just happened? Who was he? Where was he? This brat deserves a lesson. Before the man could react, an angry voice rang in his ear. The next moment, he felt a weight on his tail. His entire body slid down from the rock. Shining dragged him by his tail all the way back to the courtyard and threw him on the ground full of luminous pearls. "Miss Shin, what was that sound just now?" "Ah." Fong Fong came in with tea and saw the man with a human body and a fish tail on the ground. She was so shocked that she screamed, What is this?" "Master." Chef rushed over with a dish in one hand and a spatula in the other. He stared blankly at the person on the ground. "This is fish. It could also be a whistle spirit. It had been screaming for a long time just now. It was so noisy." "Oh, then." Chef finally put down the dish in his hand and took out a kitchen knife. "Do you want an extra dish?" "Fong Fong, the man, Shining, I'm back." Lone Moon happened to walk in. "I've already informed the City Lord Manor, they've sent people over." "Ah." Where did this merman come from? Under the illumination of the night luminescent pearls, Lone Moon immediately saw the man in the middle, who looked a little dazed. It came from the water. Shining pointed to the riverside. Lone Moon turned around. "Holy shit! What did you do this time? Why was there a big hole in the opposite mountain as soon as he came back?" Shining thought about the size of that pearl just now and replied, "Played tennis." "Tennis your ass. You can make a hole in the mountain if you play tennis." "Miss Shining, are you alright?" Fong Fong also walked over quickly and looked fearfully at the merman on the ground who seemed to have been scared silly. "Is this really a merman? Legend has it that mermen like to eat human flesh and often use songs to bewitch people. I didn't expect that, it's actually true." So this merman picked Shining. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. This merman's taste was quite special. He picked one that couldn't be messed with. He directly took 2 steps forward and picked up the merman on the ground. "Tell me, what do you want?" That merman was stunned for a moment and turned to look in Shen Ying's direction. His entire body began to tremble again. He opened and closed his mouth a few times but could only let out ear-piercing cries, his eyes filled with fear. "Can't speak." Lone Moon was stunned for a moment. Impossible, could it be that his sentience was not developed? Looking closely, this merman really seemed to be a low-level demon beast. But this place clearly didn't have spirit chi, why would there be creatures like mermen? Just as he was thinking, a series of orderly footsteps came from the street outside. More than 10 people who looked like officials walked over. "Who reported that there was a murder case here?" The person walking at the front asked loudly and stepped into the courtyard first. In the next moment, he was so frightened by the creature in Lone Moon's hand that his legs turned to jelly and he directly took a few steps back. What monster is this?" Lone Moon didn't know how to answer for a moment. Instead Fong Fong, who was at the side, answered, replying to "Sir Officer, this seems to be a merman. It came out of the water and wanted to eat humans. It just happened to be restrained by these few young masters." "Merman." The fear in that official's eyes retreated a little. He looked down at the luminous pearls on the ground and his eyes instantly lit up. Is this the legendary merman whose tears turn into pearls? Fong Fong was stunned and could only answer, "Maybe, it is. I guess." The official's eyes lit up even more, he had long lost the fear from before. He stared closely at the creature in Lone Moon's hand. Can this thing still hurt people?" Lone Moon frowned but still replied, "Mermen live on water, naturally they won't be aggressive once they're on land. Unless it was a high-level merman that could completely transform, it was obvious that this one wasn't." Good. That official said a few good words in a row, the excitement on his face seemed to be uncontrollable. Thinking of something, he then turned to look at Lone Moon and the others and said, "This demon is too dangerous, leaving it here might cause unforeseen events, it's better that I help you bring it into the City Lord Manor to be locked up." With that said, without waiting for their reply, he hurriedly ordered the few people behind him, "Go, capture that demon." The people behind the official rushed forward. Was this the rhythm of snatching things? Lone Moon hesitated for a moment but did not stop them, allowing them to take the merman away. "Sir, then the murder case here." Seeing that they were about to leave, Fong Fong came forward with some anxiety. Only then did that official remember his purpose of coming, and hurriedly said, "The matter here, the person who reported the case just now has already explained very clearly. Don't worry, those people who murder for money, the city lord will naturally deal with them." With that said, he asked for the location of the 3 people in the shop, and conveniently brought the 3 people who fainted away to be locked up as well. He didn't even confirm the whole story again, as if he couldn't wait to go back. It seemed like he was curious about that merman whose tears turned into pearls, and wanted to bring it back personally to verify. Even the officials of the city lord residence were so careless. It was no wonder that the shop owners here dared to run illegal businesses in the city. Lone Moon shook his head. But there was no need for them to interfere in mortal affairs. Besides, this was not their plane. Chapter 545. This. Fong Fong, on the other hand, looked at them with a confused expression. "It's getting late." Lone Moon looked at the sky. Those officials were busy presenting treasures to the city lord. It seemed like he couldn't be bothered with them. "The matter has been resolved. Let's rest first." With that said, he pulled Shining and Chef upstairs, taking away the dishes on the table. The girl couldn't say anything more. She turned and found an empty guest room to stay in. "Did you hear? Last night, a huge hole suddenly appeared in a mountain. It's hundreds of feet wide. How can we not see such a huge hole? That thing appeared overnight. And it looks very flat. It doesn't seem man-made. Rumor has it that someone heard an immortal voice from the sky last night. That voice was dreamy and illusory, like an immortal song from the 9 heavens. In that case, could that huge hole be a miracle from the heavens? An auspicious sign? Definitely. Otherwise, who would have the ability to dig through the mountain and leave such a huge hole in one night? It can only be that an immortal descended last night. Then isn't this a blessed city? Early in the morning, the entire city was talking about the huge hole that suddenly appeared in the middle of the night on the other side of the river. And the more they talked about it, the more mysterious it became. Some even swore that they saw an immortal with their own eyes. In an instant, that huge hole became a miracle. Many people even wanted to cross the river to burn incense and worship it. Lone Moon, Shining, Qing, alright, to a certain extent, it really was done by an immortal. While he was reporting the case last night, Lone Moon actually investigated the city. But the result was the same as before. This was a mortal city. It was no different from other places. There were no other places that had anything to do with managers. So he decided to go out of the city to look around. If he still didn't find anything, he would return to the plane first. Anyway, they weren't particularly interested in this big Dao organization. But just as they were about to leave the city, they were stopped by someone. It was a familiar person. It was the official who brought people to investigate the case last night. But a merman was taken away. This time, he didn't look as arrogant as before. He smiled kindly. "Everyone, the city lord invites you." "City lord?" Lone Moon faltered. It must be because of that mermaid. It seemed like this official had really offered that mermaid to the city lord. After thinking for a moment, he didn't decline. He nodded and followed the official. After a while, they arrived at the largest building in the city lord's mansion. Last night, when a person came to report the case, he just explained the situation at the door and went back. At this moment, the three of them were invited into the mansion and brought to a reception hall. There was already a person sitting inside. Upon closer inspection, it was the girl who survived yesterday. She seemed to be called Fong Fong. "Miss Shen, two young masters, why are you here too?" Fong Fong also looked at the three of them in surprise. "Miss Fong, why are you here?" Lone Moon asked. This morning, they had parted ways and left that inn. Didn't she say she was going back to her hometown? It was the officer at the city gate who said that the city lord had given the order to bring me here. Fong Fong replied. Lone Moon frowned. The city lord's voice could be heard from outside the door. In the next moment, a middle-aged man walked in hurriedly. His eyes lit up when he saw them. He quickened his steps and walked over excitedly. "You were the ones who found that mermaid." Lone Moon and Chef exchanged a look before stepping forward and answering. "We were the ones who found it." Insolence. The moment he finished speaking, the person beside suddenly shouted. "You actually don't bow when you see the city lord. Don't mind this kind of empty courtesy." The city lord waved his hand. He became even more excited. He sized up Lone Moon and turned to look at Yi Qing beside him. Satisfied, he said, "I can tell that the two of you have extraordinary skills. It's no wonder that you could catch the mermaid who has always been cruel and seductive. Actually, it was Shining who caught it." Yet the city lord was even more enthusiastic towards them. His eyes were filled with curiosity. "I wonder if the few of you can tell me how you caught it." Lone Moon was stumped. He couldn't possibly say that Shining had smashed a hole in the mountain first and scared the mermaid silly before catching it. "We've all learned some martial arts before. We met this mermaid by chance. That's why we caught it." Lone Moon could only make up a story. "I see." The city lord was obviously excited and did not suspect anything. "It seems that Mr. is also an extraordinary person. You're too kind, city lord. It's just a small trick. You don't have to be so humble, mister." The city lord became even more excited. "To be able to catch such an extraordinary creature, how can you be an ordinary person?" "Don't worry, I'll remember your contributions. I'll definitely reward you handsomely." "Thank you, city lord." It would be a waste not to accept money that was delivered to his doorstep. He smiled even more happily. He looked at the two of them again. Something flashed across his eyes. "I see that the few of you are foreigners. Since you have such skills, why don't you stay in my residence and seek a future?" he suggested directly. After thinking for a while, he added, "To be honest, I've always been very fond of such rare beasts. I've collected many in my residence. But this is the first time I've seen someone who could catch a mermaid in the sea. I really value talent." So he wanted to hire thugs. Lone Moon smiled. "Thank you, city lord, for your kind intentions. But the few of us have important matters to attend to. We're just passing by this city. It's really not good for us to stay." "Oh." His expression darkened instantly. He seemed to be displeased with his rejection. "You have to think carefully. If you stay in my residence, riches and glory will be at your fingertips. Isn't that better than you running around everywhere? Hope you understand, city lord." Lone Moon still replied. "We do have important matters to attend to." The city lord's expression darkened even more. After a while, he continued smiling. "Don't be in such a hurry to make a decision. I see that the few of you are also knowledgeable about alien races. Why don't you follow me to the rare beast garden to take a look at those alien races I've collected? Then you can make your decision." With that said, he turned and walked out without waiting for their reply. The guard beside him who was carrying a knife took 2 steps forward. He looked like he was waiting for the few of them to move. Lone Moon and I Ching exchanged a look. Something flashed in their eyes at the same time. They then followed, pulling Shining along. Fong Fong, on the other hand, had a look of panic on her face. She had no choice but to follow them. She walked carefully beside Shining. The rare beast garden that the city lord mentioned was not far. The few of them followed him through a few courtyards. Finally, they turned into a courtyard with a completely different style. The courtyard was huge. But it was filled with rare treasures. The roadside was filled with all kinds of exotic flowers and plants. From time to time, they could see all kinds of odd-looking creatures passing through. There were deer with flowering branches on their heads. There were cats that could speak human language. Strange beasts with strange appearances. These were all things that could not be easily seen in the mortal realm. Chapter 546. Fong Fong was completely stunned. She looked at everything in front of her in disbelief. Even Lone Moon and I Ching's eyes flashed with surprise. There were actually all demon beasts and spirit herbs here. In this world without spirit chi, where did they come from? How is it? How's my rare beast garden? The city lord said with some intention of showing off. It really leaves a deep impression. Lone Moon replied politely. These are just some small things. He continued, follow me inside. With that said, he continued to walk forward. The deeper they went, the more things they saw around them. Lone Moon looked carefully. Even the surrounding spirit herbs, from the original first and second level, there were already fourth and fifth level ones appearing at the back. They could be considered as mid-level spirit herbs, but he still couldn't sense any bright aura of spirit chi. Lone Moon suppressed the surprise in his heart, followed the city lord all the way into a cave. There were no more spirit herbs in the surroundings. The cave was no longer dark. The stone walls at the side were covered with small colorless flowers. The flowers were transparent, but emitted a faint white light. Fong Fong seemed to have never seen such a strange flower. She subconsciously reached out and touched the left side. In the next moment, a terrifying beast roar came from the stone wall. Something rushed out from the stone wall, opened its mouth and bit towards her. Fortunately, Shining, who was next to her, reached out and pulled her, thus she managed to avoid it. Fong Fong was startled. Her face instantly turned as pale as snow. She panted heavily. Half of her body fell limply onto Shining, looking like she was quite frightened. Ha ha ha, I forgot to remind everyone. There is a stone beast living in this stone wall. It has a bad temper. This flower is his favorite. You can't touch it. The city lord reminded without much sincerity, then continued to walk forward. Fong Fong's face was so scared that there was no trace of blood on her face. Shining held her up, then stood up with a face still full of shock. After a while she said softly, "Thank you." Shining turned back to look at her in surprise, crunched a bite of the fruit, then nodded and responded, The group headed straight into the cave. After a while, the surroundings suddenly heated up. The city lord stopped in front of a huge metal door and introduced with even more excitement. This is the most unique beast in my precious beasts garden. Even I, the city lord, don't know what it is. It took a lot of effort to catch him. After saying that, he activated the mechanism at the side. Immediately, a wave of hot air rushed over. There was another iron fence inside, and through the gap in the middle, they could see raging flames everywhere. And in the middle of the raging flames, there was a giant beast that was as tall as 3 people lying inside. This was a 7th grade flame beast. Lone Moon hurriedly turned to look at I Ching. Seeing him nod, he hid the shock in his eyes. There was a 7th-ranked demonic beast but no spiritual chi. Interesting. How is it? The city lord looked at them again and said, I was even able to capture such a monster, which shows the power of my city. Have you changed your mind and decided to stay and work for me? The city lord is naturally powerful and rich enough to rival a country. Lone Moon smiled and said, but we really don't want to stay here. It's not convenient for us to stay in the city for long. We can only let down your good intentions. The city lord's expression darkened even more. A guard at the side spoke up directly. You actually don't know how to appreciate favors. It's really too. Before he could finish, the city lord raised his hand to stop him. His eyes darkened as he smiled and said, all right, since you don't want to stay, then I won't force you. You can leave. Thank you, city lord. Lone Moon gave Chef a look and turned to walk out. But the city lord and that guard behind did not follow, as if they really intended to watch them leave. But they had only taken a few steps when they suddenly heard a cracking sound. Their feet suddenly sank and the originally flat road disappeared directly. The four of them fell down together. They could still faintly hear the curses of a certain city lord from above. Unappreciative things, serves you right to become food in the mouth of a monster. Among the four, the most panicked one was not Fong Fong. She screamed directly. Lone Moon and Yi Qing were long prepared. Chef directly turned and hugged Shining, who was beside him. Lone Moon also grabbed Fong Fong, who had a look of horror on her face. They landed on the ground in a few leaps. The sound of water splashing could be heard beside their ears. Lone Moon directly took out a pearl and shook it. Their surroundings lit up instantly. Only then did they see clearly that they were standing on a protruding rock. Below them was an underground river a few meters wide. In the river, hideous-looking strange fish jumped out of the water from time to time, revealing their mouths full of sharp teeth. Fong Fong's expression was even uglier. She instantly broke free from Lone Moon's hand and hid behind Shining as if she was used to it. What? What is this place? The few of them did not answer. Instead, Yi Qing looked at her, tightly holding onto his master's hand. He frowned and pointed to the right after a while. Father Nyo, over there. WH. What over there? Fong Fong's face was still full of horror and confusion. Why did the city lord suddenly lock us up here? He didn't want us to live in the first place. Lone Moon explained casually. He probably didn't want outsiders to know about the mere people he obtained. So those of us who know, either become his people or become dead people who can't speak. Fong Fong's eyes widened abruptly. Her face was full of disbelief. She didn't seem to think that the dignified city lord would do such a despicable thing. Lone Moon had long guessed that the city lord was not a good person. Otherwise, why would that shop owner open a shady shop in the city so brazenly? The reason why they came over here was because he had looked around the entire city yesterday. Only the city lord's abode had not been searched. So he just went with the flow and came to take a look. But he didn't expect that there would really be a discovery. A place without spirit chi would actually grow spirit herbs and high-level demon beasts. This was really too strange. In addition, when they saw that 7th-level demon beast just now, he and Chef felt a trace of spirit chi at the same time. Originally, it was not impossible to take advantage of the situation and pretend to agree to the city lord's enlistment. But it was too troublesome. Not only was it a waste of time, they also couldn't investigate openly. They might as well just fall out with him. But they didn't expect that this trace of spirit chi would coincidentally appear in this underground river. It was a pleasant surprise. It was a pity that the spirit chi was too weak. In addition, this place was strange. Their spells couldn't be used. Naturally, they didn't have to use their divine perception to investigate. It was very troublesome. But as long as they could find the source of that trace of spirit chi, they would probably be able to find out what exactly was going on in this place. However, this woman called Fong Fong was going to suffer an unexpected calamity. Master, let's go. Yi Qing said and directly carried Shining. With a few leaps, he used the protruding rocks on both sides of the underground river to move forward along the direction of that underground river. Chapter 547. Miss Fong, sorry for the offense. Lone Moon also glanced at Fong Fong, and brought her along to follow, but he was carrying her. The two of them were very fast, but they still followed the flow of that underground river for an hour, and still did not see the end of this underground river. By right, even if it was an underground river, it should flow into a river or into the sea. They must have long left the perimeter of that city, but still did not find the end. Chef, who was leading the way, suddenly paused, and turned to look at the stone wall on the right. What's wrong? Lone Moon also stopped. I Ching turned back to look at him. The direction has changed. Lone Moon was stunned, and felt carefully. Indeed, the spirit chi that had been following the river just now, suddenly made a sharp turn and entered the stone wall at the side, and seemed to be even thicker. I Ching thought about it, then took a few steps back, and put down the person in his hand. Master, wait here for a while, don't get too close. With that said, he stuffed a fruit into her hands. Oh. Shining took it, and took 2 steps back. Lone Moon also hurriedly pulled Sister Fong Fong back. Only then did I Ching take out a long sword from his storage bag, and focused on the stone wall at the side, and slashed hard. Instantly, there was a loud crash, though he could not use sorcery, but Chef's swordsmanship still broke the entire stone wall in an instant. Large pieces of rubble tumbled down with a rumble, revealing a passage that was forcefully slashed by the sword chi. Let's go, master. I Ching kept his sword, and then turned around. Shining followed. Wait for me. Fong Fong hurriedly took 2 steps forward, still following behind Shining with some shock. Lone Moon could only walk at the back. The passage that Chef temporarily split open was not very wide. At first it could only allow one person to pass through, but for some reason, the further in they walked, the wider it became. Only the surroundings became even darker. Even the illumination bead in Lone Moon's hand seemed unable to illuminate the surroundings completely. Fong Fong's expression became more and more flustered, and she followed even faster, and even subconsciously pulled Shen Ying's hand. What exactly is this place? I don't know. Shining replied as she continued to chew on her fruit. There was no hint of panic on her face. It was as if she was not in an unknown and dangerous place, but had come specially to explore. Fong Fong took a look at her, and for some reason, she wasn't that afraid anymore. Miss Shen is really brave, even I'm not this nervous. She revealed a kind smile and suddenly seemed to have thought of something. Oh yes, I also bought a few pears on the street this morning. Since Miss Shen likes fruits so much, would you like to try some? After saying that, she directly took out a pear from her bag. Shining didn't look at the pear. Instead, she turned her head and looked straight at her. She didn't respond for a long time. When the other party thought that she was going to reject him, she suddenly smiled and nodded. All right. Thank you. After saying that, he took it. You're welcome. Fong Fong smiled back at her and turned to look ahead. Suddenly, her expression changed as she said, Hey, is there light in front? Is it the exit? With that said, she pulled Shining with a look of pleasant surprise and took 2 quick steps forward. Indeed, not far away, there was suddenly a white light, and it was getting brighter and brighter. At the same time, a thick wave of spirit chi rushed towards them. I Ching and Gu exchanged a look behind them and quickened their steps. Great, we can finally go out. Fong Fong was even more delighted. Her face was full of excitement. The white light in front of them was increasing, but it didn't look like sunlight at all. Instead, it looked like a large patch of moving light spots. This is... She stopped in her tracks and looked in front of her in shock. All she saw was a large patch of thick white in front of her. She couldn't tell what it was, as if countless light spots had gathered together and covered the ground. It was flowing slowly, as if it was a white spring. In a blink of an eye, everything around them disappeared. It was as if they were transported to another time and space. Everything around them was dark, leaving only that patch of white in front of them. What? What is this? Fong Fong's face was full of shock. Lone Moon took a step forward and suddenly turned his head and smiled. What is this? Shouldn't you tell us? Young master, what are you talking about? She turned back with a confused look. I don't understand what you mean. Lone Moon's eyes darkened. You spent so much effort to lure the three of us here. It can't be just for us to watch you act, right? She was stunned for a moment. In the next moment, her original innocent and confused expression changed instantly. Suddenly, her figure flashed and she directly retreated into that patch of white light, revealing a smug smile. I didn't think that I would still be seen through. When did you guys start suspecting me? When you appeared in the room downstairs. Lone Moon wasn't in a hurry as he explained slowly. Downstairs. She was stunned for a moment. Didn't that mean that she had exposed herself right from the start? How did you guys know that I was acting? Lone Moon rolled his eyes and gave her an expression that said, we live upstairs. If the old man downstairs was really killed by that innkeeper, it's impossible that we didn't hear anything. Moreover, there were no bloodstains on those two people's knives. Those two people with knives heard the waiter's voice and ran up hurriedly. If they really killed someone first, how would they have the time to clean their knives before coming up? I see. She looked stunned. I didn't think that I would be exposed so early. Since you guys already knew that there was something wrong with me, why did you bring me all the way here? Since we're already here, we naturally want to find out. Lone Moon said. What exactly do you want to do by luring us here? What do I want to do? She suddenly laughed out loud. Her eyes darkened and instantly filled with malice. She gritted her teeth and said, of course I want to turn you bunch of scum into ashes. Lone Moon was stunned. He kept feeling that her hatred came out of nowhere. We don't even know you. Why did you do this? Why? Ha ha ha. She laughed even louder. Her eyes turned cold and the hatred that was like the sea suddenly poured out. You invaded my world for no reason and you're asking me why. Invaded? Lone Moon was stunned. His eyes widened in disbelief. You're a manager. How was that possible? Such a small world, was it really a plane? Are you very surprised? As if guessing what he was thinking, she laughed even colder. Such a small plane also has a manager. It's a pity that you guys don't have the chance to leave this plane alive. The same goes for your manager. As she spoke, she suddenly raised her hand. The pair in Shen Ying's hand suddenly turned into several rays of white light, forming 4 walls of light that directly locked her inside. Chapter 548. Master. I Ching was shocked. Just as he was about to save her, the light wall suddenly flashed with white light and disappeared in an instant. Instead, it appeared behind Fong Fong. This is a restriction I created using the power of the original source. No one can escape. Your target from the start was Shening. Lone Moon's expression darkened. He suddenly thought of that mermaid. It was a creature that lived in the sea, yet it appeared by the river. Moreover, it wasn't just the mermaid, the city lord, and even the black shop. They were all used by her to test them. That's right. Who asked her to be your manager? I originally wanted to get rid of her directly. Fong Fong said indifferently. Unfortunately, I underestimated her strength. Even if I retracted the immortal spirit chi of this plane, she still has such terrifying strength. I could only lure you here and use the power of the original source to suppress your abilities. Lone Moon was stunned. He subconsciously sensed his own plane. Indeed, he could not sense it at all. And the plane door was locked. No wonder she brought them here. So she wanted them to have no way out. Are you done with your nonsense? I Ching's expression darkened. He took a step forward and pulled out his sword. Do it. Fong Fong laughed coldly. She did not take them seriously at all. She turned and glanced at Shining, who was trapped in the white light. The manager is already in my hands. This is the land of the original source. With your strength, you can't. Before she finished speaking, a terrifying sword chi suddenly slashed towards her. It carried an aura that could sweep away everything, and a thick murderous aura. She subconsciously dodged to the side to avoid the sword aura. Her heart turned cold. If she had not dodged fast enough, the sword chi would have already hit her. How was this possible? He turned to look at I Ching in disbelief. Only to see a stormy expression. He said word by word, "Don't take out your dirty thing. Give it to my master." Lone Moon, #on a chef self-cultivation #. So the main point of your anger was only because the other party gave Shining a pair. Should he be glad that he held it in for so long and cooperated with him to finish the act before he flew into a rage? Chef, on the other hand, had already rushed out with his sword in hand. Instantly, the surrounding sword chi became even thicker, bringing with it a sense of killing. Fong Fong was forced to retreat all the way, getting closer to the place where the origin energy was even denser, but she discovered that it was completely useless. I Ching's movements did not slow down. Instead, he sped up. This, how could this be? Her face was filled with disbelief. She had clearly entered the source and controlled the manager. How could they still have this kind of ability, unless you are managers too? Her eyes widened. What? Did you only recognize me now? Lone Moon replied with a smile. How could there be 3 of them at once? She gritted her teeth as the hatred in her eyes deepened. Out of the 3 of them, the one called Shining was clearly the strongest. She was even somewhat unfathomable. That was why she instinctively thought that she was the manager and these 2 were merely her assistants. She could tell that there was a contract between the 3 of them, but she did not expect that all 3 of them were managers. As the manager of a dimension, they were actually willing to become someone else's assistant. Was there something wrong with their brains? But she did not have time to think about it. I Ching's sword move had already forced her into a corner. She gritted her teeth and her expression darkened. She did not know what she had done. The plane's original source, which was originally as calm as spring water, suddenly began to boil. Following that, there was a series of angry roars. One by one, giant beasts emerged from the water and attacked I Ching. Holy shit! This manager actually raised demon beasts in the source. Lone Moon was shocked. He cursed under his breath. Then, he pulled out his sword and rushed out. The demon beasts raised in the power of the original source were naturally not simple. They were no longer demon beasts but divine beasts. Yet, they could not use any sorcery here. They could only rely on their swords to resist. It was even more difficult to deal with them. Not to mention that a group of them came at once. Lone Moon rushed in. Together with Chef, they each took one side and began to fight. For a moment, the white light was filled with sword chi. Fortunately, although these divine beasts were strong, they did not seem to have any sentience. Even if they could not use sorcery, and the manager's abilities were suppressed in many ways, it was only a matter of time before they could defeat these giant beasts. They were just trapped inside for a while and could not get out. And Fong Fong, who had been chased and beaten by Chef, also got an instant chance to catch her breath. She retreated directly. Her injuries were not light. Her body was full of cuts from the sword chi. The cuts were so deep that her bones could be seen. But for some reason, the wounds were not healing. She was not suppressed. To a manager, these were obviously just insignificant small injuries. You are using your own power to raise them. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded beside her ear. Fong Fong was stunned. She turned around and realized that the one who spoke was Shining, who was trapped in the white light. She was still holding a fruit in her hand and gnawing on it. She did not panic at all. Instead, she tilted her head and looked at her curiously. That's not right. She suddenly changed her words. I should say, you are using your own power to nourish this broken plane. So she could not even heal herself. Her eyes widened suddenly. She looked like she had been poked. Her eyes were full of wariness. Why? Shining continued. She would not be able to hold on much longer if this went on. Why? She stood up as if her embarrassment had turned into anger. The hatred in her eyes was about to overflow. She gritted her teeth and roared. I want my plane to not collapse. I want the living beings in my world to live. I want them to be swallowed by chaos. You murderers of the Big Tao organization, what right do you have to ask me why? Big Tao organization. Shining frowned. We are not. Is there a difference? She laughed coldly. You will be soon. Otherwise, why would you appear here? As long as you kill me and destroy this plane that is already in a terrible state and struggling at death's door, you will get the right to join the organization. Right? Shen Ying's eyes narrowed. You mean, we were sent here actually as a test to join the organization? Why? You don't even know this. The coldness in her eyes intensified. She said mockingly, then the Big Tao organization is really blind this time. They actually invited a few people who don't understand the situation. Shen Ying's eyes darkened. She finally put down the fruit in her hand and reached out to break it forcefully. There was only a tearing sound. The layer of white light that trapped them instantly split open like a piece of white paper. Fong Fong's eyes bulged instantly. Shining walked directly towards her. She stopped a step away from her and said in a low voice, Come, let's have a chat. Chapter 549. You. How did you? She still looked like she had not reacted, staring blankly at the person in front of her. She had clearly trapped her. Why was it so easy? Shining had already pressed her to sit on the ground with a slap. She also sat cross-legged at the side, and even took out a few plates of pastries, looking like she was planning to have a long talk. After a moment, as if recalling something, she suddenly raised her head and shouted at the two who were fighting fiercely, Chef, Father No, stop fighting. Come over and have a good talk. With that said, she directly reached out towards the original source of white light below her, and slapped hard, only to hear a sound, faint energy, instantly spread out, sweeping towards the whole white light. And those giant beasts that were fighting with the two, like broken glass, turned into thousands of white light spots, and returned to the original source. And Fong Fong, who was forced to sit down, also felt some familiar power instantly return to her body. In the next moment, those terrifying sword wounds on her body directly healed. Lone Moon and I Ching, who had lost their opponent, exchanged a look, then kept their swords and walked back, directly sitting opposite the two. Lone Moon even glared at Shining. If she wanted to attack earlier, she made them fight for so long. Shining propped up her head with one hand, then looked at Fong Fong again. All right, come, tell your story. Fong Fong, Lone Moon, Ching. Fong Fong was stunned, and only reacted after a while. She still looked at the three with a face full of hatred, but did not attack again. Shen Ying's seemingly casual palm just now was really too shocking. She also understood, with her strength, there was no way to fight against them, she just did not attack previously. No, even if she did not attack, she probably could not defeat the other two managers. Oh right. Shen Ying glanced at her, thought of something, and turned to look at Yi Qing, saying, "Chef, use that washing machine spell on her." Lonman's mouth twitched, and he casually interrupted, "That's called the dirt removal spell." "To hell with your washing machine." "Oh, it's the dirt removal spell." Shen Ying nodded, "Otherwise she'll be covered in blood, it'll look like she's telling a ghost story." "Yes, master." "What is it?" "Spells can't be used here." "It would be F***CK." Before he finished speaking, he saw Chef cast a spell, and the blood on the other party's body disappeared completely. Apart from a few holes, the other party's clothes were as clean as new. How can he suddenly? Wait, he subconsciously sensed and found that the god power in his body had returned, not to mention the immortal chi and spirit chi that could be easily converted. What was going on? Oh. I just opened a back door. They were from the plane. Lone Moon, he vaguely felt that something in his mind had snapped. If you can open the back door, you should have started the meeting earlier. They had worked so hard for a long time. You didn't ask me to open it. Shen Ying said innocently. Zhang Xian spat a mouthful of blood. The spectating Fong Fong, were these three really managers? Why does it seem so unreliable? For some reason, he wanted to ask, was their plane still alive? The story of Fong Fong Dimensions Evergreen was, in general, a story of a successful invasion. Only that it wasn't one invader who invaded this plane, but more than 10 managers attacked at the same time. In the end, it led to the collapse of her plane, leaving behind only a place the size of this small world. And that big Tao organization was indeed like what Shen Ying said, an alliance formed by the managers of various planes. According to Fong Fong, there were already more than 10 managers now. And most of them came from immortal spirit planes similar to Yi Qing and Lonman's. But they were fundamentally different from the administrative committee that Shen Ying once came into contact with. The administrative committee was established to resolve internal exchanges, while they were formed to form alliances with outsiders. Though they wouldn't initiate a war, but if they encountered an invasion, they would swarm forward and counter-invade the other party's plane. Though they said it was for self-protection, their methods were merciless and ruthless, not listening to any explanation. They had also been taking in new members. Fong Fong was one of the invited members at that time, but she saw through their autocratic nature, so she rejected them directly. But even so, she suffered the revenge of the big Tao organization. Those people saw that she was a threat and directly launched an attack. Fong Fong only managed to preserve the last bit of plane's original source after using all her methods. She originally thought that she could start anew, but she was still discovered by those people. They trapped me in this small world and locked the last bit of original source, making me unable to escape or save my own plane. Fong Fong's eyes were empty, as if she had lost all signs of life. She was filled with despair. I can only watch as my plane moves towards death. What's funny is that they still use my dilapidated land as a trial ground for them to select their allies. They can be considered to have made full use of it. She suddenly looked up and gave a sarcastic smile. You are the targets of their selection this time. Shen Ying fell silent. Lone Moon and Yi Qing's expressions didn't look good either. They didn't expect that the big Tao organization would actually be a group of people like this. After a while, Lone Moon spoke. What are their criteria for selection? Her smile grew colder. She took a deep breath and said, to discover the truth of this world, to find the correct path to the big Tao organization. That's simple. Simple. Fong Fong turned to look at him, that deep-rooted hatred just now began to surface again. It's naturally simple to you, but to me, it's a disaster time and time again. What do you mean? Lone Moon frowned. Do you think that you're the first batch of selected managers I've seen? She laughed coldly. Not many of them are like you, completely unaware of what the Big Tao organization is. Most of them have long heard of the existence of the Big Tao organization and can't wait to join. Of course, they also know that there will be such a test, but when they can't find the path at all, what do you think they will do? Lone Moon was stunned, his expression darkening. Yet Fong Fong continued to laugh coldly. The best way they can think of is of course to find me and ask for the correct path. But they can't find me easily, so they can only force me out. Some will still be fine, they will first threaten me, some will just directly massacre the city to force me to commit. The people in this city are already the last living beings in my plane, they aren't afraid that I won't obey, and it works every time. So, instead of waiting for death, why not strike first and gain the upper hand? She swept a glance at the few of them. Even if I'm going to die, why don't I give those bastards from the Big Tao organization some trouble? Chapter 550. Was this the reason why she targeted them from the start? For some reason, Lone Moon suddenly could not bring himself to blame her. After all, in her eyes, the fact that they could enter this place meant that they were already standing on the opposite side of her. Shining, who was at the side, suddenly asked, "Are the last living beings in the city?" Why? Is this very hard to believe? Fong Fong turned back to look at her, the mockery in her eyes intensified. With a wave of her hand, the few of them only felt a blur in front of their eyes, and instantly, they were at another place. It was the city gate. On the streets beside, there were still people coming and going, but it seemed that they did not notice the sudden appearance of the few of them. Don't you want to hear a story? Then go out and verify it yourself. Fong Fong said with some self-abandonment. With that said, she did not wait for the few of them to reply, and directly left the city. The three of them exchanged a look and followed. This time, the guards at the city gate did not stop them, as if they could not see them, they went all the way out of the city. The moment they stepped out of the city, the scenery in front of them changed instantly, the original green mountains and clear waters outside the city were all gone, instead it turned into a void, as if a layer of camouflage had been removed. The inside and outside of the city seemed to be two completely different worlds, directly separated from a few meters away from the city gate. The city was still bustling with activity, but a few meters away from the city, it was a vast and boundless void, there was nothing inside, there was no sunlight on the ground, not even air, only endless darkness. How could this place? Lone Moon was stunned, he did not expect the situation outside the city to be like this, no wonder she wanted to stop them from leaving the city previously. Now that he thought about it carefully, although there were many people in front of the city gate previously, indeed no one really entered or left the city. However, whether it was when he saw that fruit previously, or what he could sense now, this small world was indeed very big. There should be a wider world outside. Why was there only one city left? After locking me in here, they also locked the void space in here. As if knowing their doubts, she answered directly, they had no intention of letting me go in the first place, so the void has been devouring this side of the world, until now there is only this city left. It won't be long before this last city disappears. By then, her plane would really disappear. The look in her eyes grew increasingly gloomy. As if she had figured something out, she sighed and said, "This void is the path to the Big Tao organization, I've lost this time, you guys can leave." Lone Moon and I Ching fell silent and frowned subconsciously. Actually, they didn't really want to join that Big Tao organization, especially after understanding these things. However, Shining, on the other hand, suddenly took 2 steps toward the void. She squatted down and stared at a spot. She turned and asked, "The girl who gave me the pear, is this the thing that's locking you up? Who's the girl who gave me pears? Also, what is it?" The three of them were taken aback at the same time. "That one." Shining pointed to the front. Seeing that the three of them were still confused, she quickly finished the fruit in her hand with a few crunches. Then, she smoothly threw the core of the fruit somewhere inside. That. Before the few of them could react, they heard a loud reverberation, like a heavenly bell, instantly spreading throughout the entire world. Following that, the ground beneath their feet shook. The entire city, no, the entire world seemed to tremble. What's going on? Lone Moon and I Ching were both taken aback. Fong Fong's eyes widened abruptly. With a look of disbelief, she said, "You can see it." "Ah." Shining calmly took out another fruit. Nodding, she said, "Isn't this very obvious?" Such a huge chain chained her up. The three of them who didn't see anything, how is this possible? Fong Fong's expression was even more shocked. She clearly searched for a very, very long time. When no manager entered, she spent all her time in the void, searching for the thing that locked her and her plane here. But she found nothing. Instantly, emotions welled up in her heart. There was excitement, agitation, hope, a worry and a hint of despair. It was very complicated. She stared straight at Shining, wanting to open her mouth but not knowing what to say. Do you need me to pluck it out?" Shining suddenly asked. Her tone was relaxed and natural, as if she was asking if she needed to eat a fruit. Fong Fong's entire body shook. She looked at her in disbelief. A huge joy flashed across her eyes. A moment later, it sank again, becoming even more complicated. "You have to help me." "Why?" She clearly only wanted their lives from the start. "Huh?" Shining was taken aback. She seemed to have just thought of this question. She was stunned for a long while. Did she need a reason for this? She could only push Lone Moon beside her. "Father, no, give a reason." "How would I know?" Lone Moon glared at her. Then, he replied casually, "Just take it that we're nosy." Yet her expression became even more complicated. She clenched and unclenched her fists a few times. The remaining hatred in her eyes instantly disappeared completely. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, as if she had let go of something. After a while, she said, "Forget it. You don't have to do this. This has nothing to do with you in the first place. Why bring trouble upon yourselves?" She sighed. She turned to look at the void in front of her. It was as if she was looking at something through this darkness. "My plane is already hopeless. If you really sympathize with me, then after you join the Big Tao organization, don't let a situation like mine happen again." She lowered her head to look at Shining, who was still squatting on the ground. An indiscernible warmth flashed across her eyes. She opened her mouth as if wanting to say something to her. Finally, she turned her head and said, "You guys leave. Even if you can see it, the seal set by more than 10 managers at the same time will not be easily." Rumble. Before she finished speaking, there was a sudden loud sound. Shining suddenly reached out towards the void. She seemed to have grabbed onto something and pulled hard. The entire heaven and earth shook even more violently than before. Even Fong Fong could not stand steadily. In the next moment, a huge piece of heaven and earth appeared beneath her feet. The city that was originally right in front of them was pulled further away in an instant. It completely disappeared from their vision. No. It was not that the city had run far away. It was that the void had retreated. They were just conveniently pulled to the edge of this new world by the edge of the void. Fong Fong only felt her entire body lighten. It was as if some familiar power had returned to her body instantly. She could even feel that the plane that was originally so weak that it seemed like it was about to be extinguished suddenly had an additional trace of life. A huge gap appeared in the power that was chaining her. Chapter 551. How could it be? Her face was bewildered, as if she couldn't react at all. She was completely stunned. It was clearly a seal made by more than 10 managers working together. After so long, not only was she completely helpless, she couldn't even sense where the thing that was sealing her was. Why was it so easy for her to cheat or whatever? You'll be fine once you get used to it. Father Nyo, who was experienced, suddenly spoke. Ha! What cheat? Fong Fong was stunned. But Shining had already turned and walked to the side. There are 2 more. With that said, she squatted down again, grabbed something, and pulled it up like weeds. The void retreated rapidly again. It was unbelievably easy. Fong Fong even couldn't help but start to doubt her own eyes. Those seals were so easily gone. Although she vaguely sensed from the start that she was the most capable one among the 3, that was why she mistook her as a manager. But wasn't this also a little too much? This was simply a completely different existence from managers. Then, what exactly was she? Until she pulled out the last seal, the entire world had changed completely. Although it was still barren and wasn't as vast as the plane, it was already a complete world of its own. And the void that was originally dark and boundless also instantly shrunk and deformed, becoming only a passageway the height of a person, like a plain door, hanging in midair. Obviously, this was the door to the Big Tao organization. All right. Shining clapped her hands, then stood up. This. Fong Fong looked straight at Shining. That power that had been sealing her and the plane had completely disappeared. For a moment, emotions such as excitement and disbelief surged up in an instant, striking her so hard that she couldn't come back to her senses. After a long while, she finally understood. She seemed to be finally free. Her eyes instantly turned red, the sky full of water rushed out at once, even her vision began to blur. The corner of her mouth opened and closed a few times, as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, only 2 words came out. Thank you. Other than thanking, she really couldn't think of any other words. Shining tilted her head and replied, You're welcome. If there's nothing else, we'll leave first. Shining glanced at the 2 beside her, then turned and walked towards the void passageway. It was as though what happened just now was just a small interlude. Lone Moon and I Ching looked like they were used to it and followed. Just as the 3 of them were about to leave, Fong Fong then reacted and shouted anxiously, Wait. Is there anything else? The 3 of them turned around. You are going to the Big Tao organization. I have to go take a look. Lone Moon replied. Her expression instantly turned serious. She took 2 steps forward and said, Although you might think that I'm saying this after the fact. But please be careful of the people from the Big Tao organization. They are definitely not what they seem on the surface. Even if they send an invitation, it doesn't mean that they sincerely welcome you to join them. Lone Moon frowned and looked at her. Why do you say that? She gritted her teeth, and hesitation flashed across her face. After a while, she said in a low voice, I don't know if I'm thinking too much, but after so long, I've been thinking too much. The Big Tao organization had been recruiting managers on a large scale. Who knew what scale it had reached now? I have a feeling that they didn't establish such an organization just to protect themselves. They should have other motives. Lone Moon's expression darkened. He had thought of this as well. That place was probably not a good place indeed. A tinge of guilt suddenly surfaced on her face. Don't tell them that you helped me escape the lockdown. It's best to pretend that you've never been here. I understand this. Lone Moon nodded. Fong Fong was someone that the Big Tao organization wanted to lock up. They released her directly and got into trouble before even going there. Naturally, they couldn't admit it so easily. But, regarding the fact that we've been to this world, we can't hide it even if we wanted to. Those people in the Big Tao organization were all managers. They should be able to sense where they came from. Fong Fong's face paled. She suddenly thought of something and immediately said anxiously, "Did you bring the invitation card that the Big Tao organization sent you?" Lone Moon faltered. With a turn of his hand a moment later, that white red strip instantly appeared on his hand. She hurriedly took it over. They didn't know what she did, but that silk cloth that was originally like white moonlight suddenly started to turn red. In a short while, it completely turned red. I erased all the aura related to my plane from this silk cloth and only left the Big Tao organizations. This way, they will think that they made a mistake and cause you to enter the Big Tao organization directly. Thank you. Lone Moon then took it. The guilt in her eyes deepened. I'm the one who implicated you in the first place. She turned to look at Shining. She couldn't help but add, I see that you've just become managers. And those managers of the Big Tao organization, their planes have existed for God knows how long. Their power is not something that ordinary managers can fight against. And they have a lot of people. So, please be very careful. It's best not to clash with them head-on. Lone Moon nodded. He naturally understood that although they had the cheating, but if they went against so many managers, they would be the ones at a disadvantage. At most, they would just have to go through the motions. Then what plans do you have for the future? He casually asked. Fong Fong faltered. A moment later, she revealed a sincere smile. I've already escaped their seal. Of course I have to hide far away from them. Then I'll rebuild my plane. Her eyes were filled with anticipation for the future. There was no longer the despair that she revealed from time to time. Then we'll meet again. Lone Moon said and was about to turn. But Fong Fong suddenly took 2 steps forward and walked to Shenying's side. Full of excitement and gratitude, she pulled her hand and said, Miss Shen, I have nothing to give you. Please take this. With that said, she stuffed a pear into her hand. This is a small sealing array made using the original source of my plane's chi. Although it's ineffective against you, it can still trap 1 or 2 ordinary managers. It might be useful if you bring it along. Shening looked at the pear in her hand. Can it be eaten? Fong Fong faltered. No, no. Oh. Shening raised her head disinterestedly. But since it was a gift, she didn't stuff it back. Thank you. Then she stuffed it into Father Nyo's hand. No, I should be the one thanking you. She didn't mind. She reminded them a few more times to be careful. Sister Pear, goodbye. Her surname wasn't Pear. The few of them then turned and passed through the tunnel. They disappeared. Fong Fong stood where she was. With a heavy expression, she looked in the direction where the few of them disappeared. Hopefully they would be fine. The one under Chef's feet was a golden tree with lush foliage, while the one under his feet was a smaller, bare purple tree that looked like it had entered winter early. This was their plane tree. There was nothing beneath Shen Ying's feet, not even a reflection. Lone Moon's expression darkened. At once, he was even more fearful of the power of the so-called Big Tao organization's management. It was just a body of water, yet it could directly reflect the situation of their plane. No wonder they could silently hang that fruit on the plane tree back then. The strength of the managers inside was definitely not simple. Lone Moon and Yi Qing's expressions became more serious. They exchanged a look before continuing to walk towards the palace. The palace was extremely tall. In front of the palace was a huge stone door more than 10 feet tall. There were all kinds of unknown patterns carved on it. The few of them had just reached the door when it opened with a creak. Inside was not the appearance of an ordinary palace. Instead, it was a vast and boundless sea of stars. And connecting to the door was a path formed by the convergence of starlight. As they walked on it, there were still bits and pieces of starlight floating around, like disturbed fireflies. This was the real Starlight Avenue. Lone Moon hesitated for a moment before walking down. He followed the light all the way to a floating platform. Almost the moment they stood still, a man's voice came from all around. "This is the manager who joined this time." Lone Moon subconsciously turned to look. He saw a wisp of strange aura in front of him. Not long after, the starry sky seemed to be torn apart. A figure appeared in front of them. Then, the space beside them also changed. In a short while, more than 10 figures appeared around the platform. Each of them had an aura similar to that of him and Chef. Without a doubt, these were the managers of the Big Tao organization. He counted carefully. There were as many as 16 of them here alone. At the same time, 16's gaze swept over them. Looking at their auras, they seemed to be managers of new planes. Is the standard for joining so low now? The man who spoke first laughed coldly. It was clear that he had a problem with them. Instead, the woman beside him said, "That invitation was just sent out not long ago. Although it's a new plane, to be able to pass the test so quickly proves that they have some ability." The man on the right also chimed in. "Being able to reach here proves that they have the qualifications to join the organization and become one of us." "That's right, Tuji. Who knows, we might all be friends in the same organization in the future. Why do you have to make things difficult for them right from the start?" Another man also spoke up. "Humph." The man called Tuji snorted coldly. Still with some dissatisfaction, he said, "It's not certain whether they can join the organization or not. Our Big Tao organization is not a place that just any manager can join." Lone Moon frowned as he listened. It turned out that these people were the ones who sent them invitations to join the organization. Not only did they send them to some godforsaken place for a test, they even picked on them the moment they entered. Lone Moon could not help but feel even less disgusted with this so-called Big Tao organization. The woman beside Tuji smiled at them and said, "The two new managers do not need to be nervous. We are all allies in the organization. As long as Boss Yu Hing agrees, your plane will also be an ally with us in the future. It's just that there's a small matter that we need to confirm." With that said, apart from Tuji, all 16 of them turned to look at the person in the middle. "May I ask, when the few of you were walking outside just now, what was the color of the flowers that grew in the water?" The woman asked. Lone Moon was stunned. He did not know why she would suddenly ask this. But he guessed that this kind of thing could not be hidden. Hence, he directly said, "The flowers that grew under our feet were all white." "White?" the woman exclaimed. She was not the only one. Everyone present looked over in surprise. "Are you sure it was white?" "I'm sure." Everyone was silent for a moment. Especially Tuji, who directly said, "How is that possible? I don't believe that the managers of these two new planes would have this kind of ability." With that said, he waved his hand and conjured a water mirror. He shook the mirror and immediately, the scene of them walking on the water appeared. When he saw the white flowers on the water surface, Tuji's face paled. He looked like he had eaten **tea. Even the other managers were shocked. They turned and whispered to each other, as if they were very surprised by this scene. Chapter 553. May I ask everyone, what do these flowers mean? Lone Moon couldn't help but ask. The lady who spoke then replied, you too might not know since it's your first time here. The water outside is called the initial water realm. It can reflect the appearance of the manager plane, and the flowers that grow can show the manager's abilities. The lighter the color, the higher the cultivation of the person. It's the first time we've seen white flowers like yours. Even among the 16 people who came to receive them, none of them were white. Was the athlete's aura used to test their abilities? He couldn't help but turn to look at Chef, who was also confused. Their abilities were considered high among the managers? He didn't feel anything at all. Moreover, if the higher the ability, the lighter the color of the flower, then why didn't Shining even bloom? What was going on? Maybe it was because of the athlete's aura. Pooey. Because of the flowers, the 16 people on the platform looked at them with much friendlier expressions. Even Tu Ji, who was looking for trouble at the start, didn't mock them anymore. Looks like I have to congratulate the two of you in advance for becoming members of the Big Tao organization. The lady's gaze became more passionate. Lone Moon held it in but didn't say anything to object. Naturally, he didn't want to join this Big Tao organization. One look and he knew it wasn't a proper organization. But Sister Fong Fong was right. There was no need to clash with them. He wasn't afraid of them. What's more, they had the plane behind them. If they joined forces against them, who knew what would happen? This was also why they made this trip instead of going back directly. They might as well pretend to join first. With such abilities, it's no wonder you passed the test so easily, the lady continued. At the same time, she raised her hand to conjure a seal, as if she wanted to do something. As long as Boss Yu hang. She suddenly paused. What's wrong? Seeing that her expression wasn't right, the people beside her instinctively asked. The small testing world disappeared. Everyone faltered. After a closer look, their expressions changed as well. They all turned to look at the person in the middle. Their passionate expressions just now all turned cold in an instant. The lady scanned the two of them from head to toe before saying in a low voice, both of you, we just sensed that the small testing world suddenly went out of control and disappeared without a trace. I wonder if you could tell us what happened when you passed the test. It's here. Lone Moon stared blankly for a moment before replying, test. What kind of test are you talking about? He looked as if he didn't know what was going on. How do I enter this society? Do I need to go through a test? You didn't enter the test. The woman glanced at him suspiciously. Then how did you get here? Of course it's because of the aura on your invitation card. Lone Moon took out the red ribbon that he had prepared earlier and activated his immortal chi. The ribbon floated towards the other party. The woman took it and glanced at it, and her face instantly darkened. On the other hand, the manager named Tuji laughed out loud as if he had found something to use against them. Ha 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 ha. I really thought they passed the test so quickly. Turns out they didn't even enter the test. After saying that, he looked at the woman mockingly. Xiao Yun, how could you make such a small mistake? Let's see how you're going to explain yourself when boss arrives. You. The woman glared at Tu Ji angrily. She looked at Lone Moon and Yi Qing with a look of reproach. She was no longer as enthusiastic as before. What do you guys think we should do? Are we going to accept them or not? The others exchanged looks. They didn't expect to make such a mistake. Before he could say anything, Tu Ji had already started yelling. Of course not. Those who don't pass the test can't enter the society. That's the rule. Tu Ji glanced at them. It's the same no matter how strong they are. Then what do you think we should do? Xiao Yun was also angry. She glared at him. No wonder there's a new test. The small world for the test has already disappeared. Anyway, we can't let them enter the society so easily. What's more, they're people you found. Seeing that the two of them were about to start arguing, someone beside them suddenly said, "Stop arguing, the two of you. Boss is here." The two of them's expressions changed. They stopped arguing at the same time. The next moment, a special suppressive force appeared in the air. This suppressive force was so strong that it was completely different from that of a manager. Even Lone Moon and Yi Qing were stunned. They subconsciously turned to the right. They saw the space in that direction distort. A man dressed in black suddenly appeared. He was dressed in a long black robe that was embroidered with ancient, light-colored patterns. His long hair flowed down his back like silk. He had sharp eyebrows and bright eyes. He was very eye-catching. He looked even better than the human form of Radish. However, there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. The suppressive force just now was coming from his body. This must be the boss Yu-Heng that those people were talking about. Lone Moon and Yi Qing couldn't help but be wary. This was not an ordinary manager. "Greetings, boss." The 16 managers present all bowed in his direction. Their expressions didn't look like they were showing respect to their colleagues. They looked more like fear. "What's the matter?" Yu-Heng asked directly. Xiao Yun's expression changed. She stepped forward and explained, "Boss, there's a problem with the two managers we just invited. They came here without going through the test. Coincidentally, the small world for the test has disappeared. We can't bring them back for the test, so... What's the problem?" Yu-Heng asked directly. Xiao Yun's face turned even paler. She handed over the red ribbon in her hand. "Boss, it's my mistake. I tied the teleportation coordinates on the invitation card wrongly. Please punish me." Yu-Heng glanced at the ribbon. His expression turned even colder. He took it and asked, "What do you plan to do?" Xiao Yun said hesitantly, "They're not bad." She was just about to tell them about the white flower. Rules are rules. Tu Ji suddenly rushed out and continued arguing. "Boss, people who haven't passed the test can't join the Big Dao organization. We can't break the rules. Otherwise, wouldn't anyone be able to join? We can't just let them go back, can we?" "Go back?" Tu Ji snorted. He scanned the few people in the middle with evil eyes. "Go back for what? Have you ever sent anyone who hasn't joined the Big Dao organization back?" Xiao Yun paused. She seemed to have thought of something. "You mean, they broke the rules? Of course they have to pay the price." Tu Ji's eyes suddenly lit up. He looked straight at the two of them. "Anyway, their plane is just a newborn plane that isn't that important. The powers of these two can be used to nourish the waters outside. Wouldn't it be better to help other members increase their powers?" Chapter 554. The moment he finished speaking, everyone's eyes lit up. They looked at Lone Moon and the others as if they were sheep waiting to be slaughtered. Lone Moon frowned. He immediately understood the Big Dao organization's motive. "So this is how you recruit members?" He felt disgusted. He scanned the crowd and laughed coldly. "What Big Dao organization? It's just a large-scale plane invader group." "What did you say?" Tu Ji's expression darkened. "I said you are a bunch of scum." The friendliness on Lone Moon's face disappeared, replaced by anger. Suddenly, he felt that the idea of muddling through was a little stupid. On one hand, you're thinking of recruiting people into the society, but on the other hand, you're trying to kill someone else's plane. I'm sure there are more than one or two managers who have been tricked to die here by you. They took the initiative to invite others, but forced others to undergo some sort of test. What's more, according to Tuji's words, those who did not pass the test became vengeful spirits that nourished the water body. And Fong Fong, who rejected them from the start, had her entire plane destroyed. In other words, they would die if they agreed, and they would die if they didn't. Was there such an organization in this world? He did not want to clash with them at first, but they had no intention of letting them off. In that case, what difference did it make whether they compromised or not? What you are doing is no different from invaders. Lone Moon laughed coldly. No. You are worse than invaders. In any case, the other party was invading openly, but you guys still want to use the big Tao to cover up your shame. Great Tao. What Tao is your great Tao? The Tao of annihilation. You. Tu Ji was furious. He glared at Lone Moon, but Yu Heng had not said anything. It was not appropriate for Tu Ji to make a move. He could only look at him inquiringly. Boss. Yu Heng's gaze landed on the person in the middle. That's right. Rules are rules. He clenched his fist and the red ribbon on it turned into dust. His expression darkened. What's more, not only did they go to the test site, they even let that small world escape. What? The others were shocked. They were in disbelief. They were the ones who let that small world escape. Do you think I won't be able to tell by dispersing its aura? He frowned and continued, since you were the ones who set the testing ground free, then other than using your lives to nourish the water, your plane will become the next testing ground. Yes. The 16 of them answered. Lone Moon could not be bothered to argue with him. Both he and Chef summoned their swords. That would depend on whether you have the ability to do so. So what if they had more people? In the next moment, the other side had already swarmed forward, and their figures were like afterimages as they charged towards the two of them. 8 on your left, 8 on my right. Chef summoned a sword array to block the first wave of attacks. After giving instructions, his figure flashed and he attacked with his sword. Something's wrong. Lone Moon suddenly took out something and threw it at the opposite side. A white light flashed, and 4 white walls of light rose up, directly trapping the 2 managers in front. It should be 7 per person. The pairs given by Sister Pair were indeed useful. For a time, the entire starry sky was filled with the flashes of spell techniques. At the end of the day, they were all managers. Although the battle in the air was intense, they could not see any shadows at all. Numerous powerful auras filled the entire starry sky. At that moment, the only people left on the platform were a solemn Yu Heng and the 2 managers who were trapped in the white walls. Although Lone Moon and Yi Qing had just been promoted, this was not the first time they were fighting managers. What's more, compared to the previous manager who invaded, these few people in front of them did not seem to be at the same level. Although it was 1 against 7, the 2 of them did not seem to be at a disadvantage. They even took the opportunity to seriously injure 2 of them. The expressions of the few of them changed. Their attacks became even more ferocious. Even the starry sky around them began to distort. Tu Ji, who was fighting with Chef, was the one who was in the worst condition. He did not know if it was because he had spoken too much earlier. Every attack that the other party sent at him was more ferocious than the others. In a short while, he was already covered in wounds. Even the flow of his energy became smoother. He gritted his teeth and took advantage of the time when the other party was attacking to hide himself. He went behind the other party and used all the energy in his body to attack with all his might. Just as he was about to attack, Yi Qing turned around and changed the sword technique in his hand. He attacked in the direction where Tu Ji's attack came from and then dodged to the side. Then, it hit the other manager opposite him. After all, it was a full-force attack. The manager's body was immediately cut in half. With a loud thud, he fell to the ground. Even if he did not die, he was already half dead. Tu Ji did not expect to hit one of his own. He was completely stunned. However, the energy did not disappear. Instead, it mixed with I Ching's sword chi and attacked something to the right. There was a loud cracking sound. It was as if some mechanism had been activated. In the originally pitch-black starry sky, a crack appeared. It was as if the entire place was being torn apart. Lone Moon, who was already prepared, sent a ray of sword chi into the crack. He waved the sword in his hand and there was a loud crashing sound. The entire starry sky shattered like a piece of black glass. It fell one after another, faster and faster. Then, with a loud crash, the starry sky disappeared. The entire beautiful palace collapsed. Everyone returned to the body of water. The feeling that had been suppressing Lone Moon and I Ching disappeared. The remaining managers' expressions changed. Lone Moon's heart relaxed. Humph. Did they really think that they did nothing when those managers were discussing? He and Chef had already figured out that starry sky. It was a world within a world. And it was a world that completely belonged to the 16 managers. That was why their abilities were suppressed. While they were chatting, he and Chef had already discussed how to break out. Without the suppression, the two of them attacked even more fiercely. But the other side had more people after all. Although one was crippled and two were locked up, Tu Ji had lost all his fighting strength and one was seriously injured. But there were still 11 people. The two of them were having a hard time dealing with them. And the other side seemed to have noticed that they looked scattered. But in fact, they were working together from time to time. They had the intention of taking them down one by one. So they started to cooperate and attack. Seeing that the situation was in a stalemate, a pair suddenly flew out and hit the two managers who were attacking Lone Moon. In an instant, 4 walls of light rose up and trapped them inside. The pressure on Lone Moon was instantly relieved. Turning back, he saw Fong Fong standing behind, panting heavily. She looked like she had rushed over. Pair. Lone Moon was shocked. My name is Fong Fong. She glared at him. Chapter 555. Why did you come back? Didn't they say that they were going to leave and rebuild the plane? He rushed forward to help as he said, you guys helped me. I can't do something so disloyal to leave you guys and run away. She gritted her teeth, her expression fierce. Damn it, it's just one life. So what if I die? Lone Moon was stunned. He suddenly had an illusion that he was looking at the disciples of Invincible sect. Oh yes, where's Sister Shining? Is she alright? Fong Fong looked around and asked anxiously. Alright, it was not an illusion at all. Could Shining have gotten the wrong male lead script? Why did a girl turn into a fangirl the moment she met her? She's fine. Lone Moon's mouth twitched. I've already left the big head for her. We're in charge of cleaning up these people. Sister Li Zi heaved a sigh of relief and focused on dealing with the person in front of her. With her addition, the two of them felt much more relaxed. Moreover, she had locked up 2 others. 9 against 3. Although Fong Fong could only hold up one of them temporarily, Lone Moon and I Ching were enough to fight back against 4. In an instant, the situation turned around. The remaining managers were getting more and more injured. In less than half an hour, another 2 were seriously injured. Yu Hang, who had been standing on the platform and watching the battle, frowned. He scoffed and said, "Humph, you're just an ant." He suddenly took a step forward and walked to the side of the 2 people that Lone Moon had locked up in the white wall. He was just about to break the wall and let them out. But in the next moment, she felt her hand tighten. A hand suddenly reached out from the side and grabbed her wrist. Turning around, she saw a face that was smiling brightly. "Sorry, you're my mission." "Ha!" Yu Heng was stunned. Who was this person? Where did she come from? He subconsciously retracted his hand, but found that he could not move. Shen Ying's eyes narrowed. "So, can we begin?" "Begin, what?" Before he could react, he suddenly felt a huge wave of energy surging towards him. His heart sank. He raised his hand and used all his strength to strike the other party's face. Shining reflexively let go of his hand and placed it in front of her. Yu Heng's palm landed on Shen Ying's arm. Yu Heng had used all his strength in that attack. Even the strongest manager would be crippled if not dead. However, Shen Ying did not move at all. Yu Heng was sent flying. The recoil from the palm strike caused Yu Heng to stumble backward by more than 100 feet. On the other side, there was a loud smack. Shen Ying's hand made an awkward sound, as if she was swatting a mosquito. Yu Heng, Shen Ying, Yu Heng was shocked. He looked at the person in front of him in disbelief. She had actually blocked his attack. "Who exactly are you?" That was a good question, but she didn't know how to answer it either. So, she asked back, "Why do all of you, as villains, like to ask the same question?" Yu Heng's face darkened. Instantly, his embarrassment turned into anger. "I don't care who you are. Don't even think about leaving here alive today." His expression darkened. His entire aura changed. The frightening aura around him suddenly became 10 times stronger. As if knowing that the other party was not easy to deal with, he used all his strength. She had blocked his attack at such a close distance just now without a scratch. This proved that she was only good at close combat. As long as he kept his distance, the other party might not be his match. Is that so? Suddenly, the other party's voice rang in his ear. The person who was more than 100 feet away just now was directly behind him. He did not even see the other party's figure clearly. In the next moment, an air pierced through the air. He felt a sharp pain in his back. There was also a faint sound of something breaking. His entire body was like a cannonball that had been released. He flew straight toward the water, creating a huge wave that swept out in all directions. At the same time, the few managers who were fighting with Lone Moon, Fang Qi, and Fang Qi were also swept up. Lone Moon, Qin, Fang, weren't they a little unnecessary? "Master." Yi Qin kept the sword and retreated. Lone Moon and Fang flew towards Shen Ying. "Shen Ying, are you all right?" Fang asked worriedly. Shen Ying hesitated. As if only just noticing her, she waved a hand in greeting. "Hey, pear girl." Fang froze. Was that pear the only thing she remembered? The huge wave finally stopped. Yu Heng, who had been sent flying, finally stood up shakily. However, he was the only one standing up. The managers who had been hit by the wave could no longer get up. Yu Heng was also seriously injured. The punch on his back was secondary. All the energy in his body seemed to have been scattered. He could not gather it at all. Even standing up was a little difficult for him. He was shocked. His eyes were filled with hatred and caution as he stared at the person in front of him. He never thought that the other party would have such terrifying power. He could not withstand just one blow. Who was this person? This was not the power of a manager at all. Could it be? He seemed to have thought of something. His face paled instantly. His eyes widened and he looked at Shen Ying in disbelief. You are a monitor." "What?" The 4 of them were stunned. What was this? Yu Heng thought that they had admitted it. His gaze became even more vicious. Even his originally pleasing face became slightly twisted. I never thought that there would really be a monitor. The fear on his face deepened. Suddenly, he gritted his teeth as if he had made up his mind about something. If that's the case, I can only give it my all. I want to see if you, the monitor, are really as the rumors say. His expression changed. The aura on his body became thicker and thicker. Even the surrounding water seemed to be stimulated by something and started to boil. Lone Moon was stunned. He suddenly had a bad feeling. What's wrong? Fong Fong was also shocked, but in the next moment, she felt her whole body sink, as if there was some terrifying pressure sweeping over. Her legs trembled, she felt her blood and chi churning, and instantly had the illusion that she was about to be crushed. Shining, who was still at the side, pulled her along, some kind of gentle energy covered over, only then did her whole body relax, and she stood up straight. Turning around, she saw that Lone Moon and I Ching were also looking very serious. Suddenly, the ground beneath Yu Heng's feet seemed to have been dyed black. A large patch of black began to spread. The water that had originally seemed to contain the blue sky now looked like it had been dyed with black ink. It spread across the entire body of water. In an instant, it was about to reach their feet. Lone Moon's heart sank. He subconsciously turned around and was instantly shocked. The managers who were locked up have disappeared. Shining. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.